Hey guys, tonight we slip back, way back, to when the world smelled like wood smoke and wet grass after the rain. You're crouched beside a flickering campfire, sparks rising like tiny stars into a sky that has never seen a city. Somewhere behind you, a half-frozen river sighs under moonlight. Someone just tossed another bundle of strange plants onto the flames. The smoke twists, curls, and, as it drifts toward your face, you breathe in. There's a sweet edge to it, something oddly pleasant, and for a second you forget the gnawing cold, the sore feet, the endless hunt. You feel lighter, maybe even amused by how your own shadow dances on the cave wall. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're joining from somewhere chilly, tell me your local time and where you're listening from in the comments. I love picturing this sleepy little tribe we've built around the world. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The story begins with smoke, simple, accidental, and utterly world-changing. You trudge through the grasslands of prehistoric Asia, your fur-wrapped feet sinking into damp soil. Fire is new but trusted now. It keeps away predators and cooks mammoth meat. What early humans don't know is that fire also transforms plants in subtle, invisible ways. Someone throws a handful of dried leaves into the flames, maybe just to keep mosquitoes away, and suddenly the camp smells different. The air tingles in your lungs. Your mind feels oddly loose, as if the stars are closer. You laugh at nothing in particular, and your classmates laugh too, because laughter is contagious even before language has words for it. Historians still argue whether these first inhalations were deliberate or accidental. Some anthropologists believe our ancestors found psychoactive plants by trial and error, guided by animal behavior, watching goats nibble on odd herbs, or seeing birds swoon after pecking certain seeds. Others think it was pure happenstance. Humans needed fire for warmth, tossed in whatever fuel they had, and happened to discover a strange calm in the curling smoke. Either way, this is the beginning, the earliest intersection between flame, leaf, and consciousness. You wander a few centuries forward in your imagination. Picture the first healer of the tribe, the one everyone whispers about when someone gets sick or lost in a nightmare. They know which roots to chew, which leaves to burn, which smokes drive away evil spirits. Maybe hemp grew near the rivers then, a hardy, useful plant with seeds for food and fibers for rope. But what if, sometimes, they burned the wrong part, or the right part, depending on how you see it? The air would thicken, eyes would glaze, and someone would say the spirits had arrived. Here's your mainstream fact for tonight. Archaeologists have found ancient braziers in western China, dating back around 500 years, containing traces of cannabis with high THC content. But even older evidence, hemp fibers woven into Neolithic pottery shards from 10,000 years ago, suggests people were cultivating the plant long before they knew it could change their minds. The quirky bit: some prehistoric graves show charred seeds mixed with the ashes of campfires, hinting that funerary incense might have had more kick than anyone expected. You shift closer to the flames. The sound of crackling wood has that sleepy rhythm that slows your breathing. The smoke stings a little but feels alive, like it carries secrets. One of the elders waves their hands through the haze, muttering soft syllables, maybe thanking invisible forces for warmth and safety. Fire is more than survival, it's connection. Around these flames, humans first start to dream together, to tell stories, to imagine that smoke can carry thoughts upward. It's strange to think how thin the line is between cooking and ceremony. You roast meat. Fine. That's dinner. But add a handful of aromatic herbs, and suddenly you're in the realm of ritual. The smell alone becomes sacred. You realize early humans didn't separate spiritual, and practical, the way we do. Everything useful was also meaningful. A branch that healed wounds or calmed pain must have come from the gods. So when certain leaves made people laugh, or stare into the night with new clarity, it wasn't recreation. It was revelation. You imagine yourself centuries later in a different tribe. Same firelight, same curiosity. Someone starts drying plants in the sun, experimenting. They notice some herbs lose their power when wet, but come alive again in smoke. Another person figures out you can pile stones around the fire, create an enclosed pit, trap the vapors. The smell gets stronger, the effect deeper. Suddenly, you're not just surviving the wilderness. You're exploring it from the inside. Modern scientists would call this the beginning of altered states of consciousness. But for early humans, it was simply visiting. They'd step sideways into a place of color and rhythm, guided by flickering shadows. You feel that now as the fire pops, each ember a tiny doorway. Maybe this is where the idea of spirits came from, not just from fear of death, but from the real, sensory experience of transformation. Here's another quirky detail some anthropologists think early people might have learned about psychoactive smoke from forest fires. Natural blazes occasionally sweep through fields of wild cannabis or other plants, and animals nearby behave strangely, relaxed, dazed, even playful. Imagine the curiosity that would spark in human minds. If the gods burn the valley and make deer dance, what happens if we mimic them? Historians still argue whether such smoke rituals began in one place or sprouted independently across continents. But it's not hard to believe they arose everywhere humans and hemp met. Cannabis grew wild from Central Asia to Eastern Europe. Where there were humans and fire, there was likely experimentation. A traveler's bundle of seeds could start an entire culture's mythology. You reach down and run your fingers through ancient soil, finding the tiny, shiny bead of a hemp seed. It smells faintly nutty, alive. You crush it between your palms. This same plant will someday weave sails, cure pain, and scandalize empires. But here, in this moment, it's just one more green thing that burns sweetly and makes the stars blur together. You smile, because it's funny. Our species discovers euphoria by accident, and spends millennia trying to regulate it. You picture a prehistoric council arguing about smoke rules.
No puffing before the mammoth hunt! Only shamans get the good leaves!
Some things never change. A soft wind stirs, and the smoke trails toward the forest. You follow it with your eyes, half, believing it's leading you somewhere. Maybe it is. The first people to get high didn't call it that. They called it touching the divine. The difference between medicine and magic was mostly vocabulary. You realize the human brain hasn't changed much since then. It's still curious, still chasing that warm, fuzzy blur between reality and dream. As the night deepens, you sense how this moment, the fire, the leaves, the laughter, sets a precedent for everything to come. From these tiny flickers of discovery will grow full, blown traditions, temples, and trade routes. Hemp will clothe armies and soothe childbirth. Its smoke will heal, delight, scandalize, and inspire. And somewhere always, there will be that quiet figure sitting nearest the flames, experimenting with the unknown. You take one more deep breath, feeling the air warm your chest. The fire pops, a spark leaps and dies in the dark. The camp settles. You realize that what you're feeling, this gentle float between waking and dreaming, is exactly what they felt. The first high wasn't about escape. It was about wonder. It was humanity's earliest flirtation with mystery. The first time someone realized the world could feel bigger than it looked. You close your eyes for a moment, imagining yourself back in your own room now. The hum of the fan, the dim light, the faint smell of something burning, faintly sweet in the distance. Thousands of years separate you from that ancient camp, but your breath is the same, Your curiosity the same. The story is still burning. You wake up to the rustle of dawn, somewhere thousands of years later, in a village that smells of clay and smoke. The fire is still alive in the pit, but now it's surrounded by more than wanderers. There are huts, woven mats, grinding stones, and pottery painted with spirals. You've stepped into a time when people have settled, and their fires have become altars. Smoke doesn't just keep away bugs anymore. It keeps away spirits. Or so everyone says. The shaman of this small settlement stirs a pot of herbs, the steam curling around their head like a crown. Their eyes are half closed, lips moving in a rhythm that sounds like breathing turned into prayer. You're watching from the edge, half curious, half cautious. The air feels thick with meaning. What once was survival has become ceremony. The same leaves that might have burned by accident in your ancestors' campfires are now chosen carefully, dried ground, and fed to the flames on purpose. The smoke rises, slow and deliberate, and the people lean in, not to get high, not consciously, but to reach something beyond the visible world. Historians still argue whether these early shamans used cannabis deliberately for its mind-altering effects or simply appreciated its pleasant aroma. Some evidence from ancient Eurasian burial sites suggests they did both. In places like the Altai Mountains, archaeologists have uncovered graves where bundles of hemp were placed beside drums, rattles, and animal bones. Maybe those who led the tribe through dreams and darkness believed the plant carried a voice. A whisper from ancestors or gods that could only be heard when the air shimmered with smoke. You feel the rhythm of the drum now, deep and slow. Each beat seems to sync with your heart. Around you, villagers close their eyes and sway, their faces calm and expectant. The shaman throws another handful of herbs onto the coals, and for a moment the fire flares green. The smell is sharp, earthy, and strangely sweet. You breathe it in, and feel the same tingling behind your eyes that the hunter once felt by accident. Only now, it's part of a system, ritualized, sanctified, made into something the community understands as sacred. The mainstream fact slips into your mind. Across early civilizations, from Siberia to Central Asia, ritual smoke was considered a bridge between worlds. Hemp wasn't unique. Other plants, like juniper, sage, and henbane, were also used. But hemp's persistence through time makes it special. It soothed pain, softened moods, and made ordinary nights feel luminous. The quirky part. Some researchers think shamans may have used hemp smoke to simulate death. A safe, reversible way to travel to the other side. They'd inhale deeply, lose themselves in visions, then return with wisdom or prophecies. It sounds dramatic, but if you think about it, that's still how people use it today. To escape, to see differently, to come back changed, even if just a little. The ceremony you're watching continues. People hum softly, the tone of their voices matching the rhythm of the wind outside. A child giggles from somewhere behind you, and nobody shushes them. In this time, joy is sacred too. The shaman's assistant walks around, waving a bundle of burning herbs, trailing fragrant smoke through the crowd. The smell clings to your skin, earthy and hypnotic. When the session ends, everyone looks calm, a little dazed, maybe a little wiser. They call it speaking with breath. You step outside the hut and look at the horizon. The morning light is hazy, diffused by the lingering smoke. Fields of early hemp plants sway nearby, tall, thin, unassuming. The fibers from those stems will soon be twisted into rope and thread, while their seeds will feed the tribe through the next winter. This plant does everything. It binds, nourishes, heals, and, on rare, secret nights, opens the mind. You follow the shaman down a narrow path toward the river. Their hands are stained green from crushing leaves. They offer you a cup made of clay, filled with a murky tea. It's bitter but comforting. You ask, silently, how they learned all this, how they know what burns, what heals, What hurts? They only smile and say, "The plants tell us." You just have to listen. You wonder whether that's literal or poetic. But before you can decide, you feel a wave of warmth roll through your body. As you stand by the water, you realize something crucial. This isn't drug use, as the modern world would label it. It's relationship. People and plants learning each other's language. The line between healer and high is blurry, but it's all part of the same conversation. The world starts to widen from this point. As villages become networks and tribes become nations, hemp travels along with them. Bundles of seeds move from valley to valley, carried in woven pouches and trade baskets. You picture nomads crossing endless plains, their horses laden with grain, spices, and a few dried flowers that can turn an ordinary fire into a sacred one. Somewhere in your imagination, a second campfire flickers hundreds of miles away. There, a different tribe performs a different ritual. Instead of drums, they hum into hollow reeds, creating a sound that vibrates in your bones. Smoke fills the tent, thick and swirling. It smells different, spicier, maybe mixed with another herb. You catch yourself smiling again, because you can see it, the same impulse, expressed in new ways. Humanity's shared curiosity for whatever lies beyond the edge of ordinary awareness. You think of what historians still argue today. Did these rituals evolve together, or did people on separate continents stumble into the same discoveries on their own? Some scholars believe trade routes helped carry the idea of smoke ceremonies far earlier than we imagine, long before the Silk Road. Others think it's an instinct. After all, humans everywhere discovered fire, laughter, and music on their own. Why not the pleasures of smoke? The night deepens again as you travel in your mind across eras. You picture yourself sitting with a shaman from ancient Scythia, wrapped in fur, kneeling before a small bronze cauldron filled with glowing stones. They toss hemp seeds onto the heat, and a puff of fragrant vapor fills the tent. Herodotus would one day write about this scene, describing how the Scythians shout for joy as they inhale the vapors. But for now, it's just you and them, breathing in the same primal rhythm that's carried across thousands of years. You start to understand that this practice isn't about getting lost. It's about finding connection. Smoke fills space, yes, but it also fills silence. It gives shape to the invisible. Early humans might not have had the vocabulary for consciousness or chemistry, but they knew what it felt like to drift, just a little closer to something divine. The fire dies down, replaced by embers that pulse like tiny hearts. You close your eyes, and for a moment you can hear whispers, real or imagined. You're not sure. Maybe they're memories left behind by generations who sat exactly where you're sitting, eyes half closed, breathing slow. You realize that through all of time, smoke has been both veil and bridge, hiding some things while revealing others. There's one last quirky detail to tuck in before the night ends. Some ancient peoples believed smoke carried not only prayers, but also the soul's fragrance. When someone died, they'd burn herbs to help their spirit find its way upward. Cannabis, with its rich aroma, may have been part of that mix. If you think about it, that makes this early shamanic smoke both a communication line and a farewell letter to the sky. As the dawn finally creeps over the horizon, you feel that quiet mix of awe and calm that always comes after ceremony. The villagers begin to stir. The shaman packs away the ashes, saving some for healing salves. Children chase each other between the huts, the laughter echoing over the river. The air still smells faintly of burned hemp. Sweet, heavy, like something sacred that refuses to fade. You take one last look around. Everything is softer now, the colors muted by early sunlight. You realize that what you just witnessed is one of humanity's first forms of therapy. The smoke ceremony wasn't escapism. It was early medicine, early religion, early art, all at once. The shaman's trance, the villager's calm. Your own drifting thoughts. All of it connected through a single spark. As you walk away from the village, the faint trail of smoke follows you, curling into the air like memory itself. You smile, a little sleepy, thinking how small and simple the act really is. Just burning leaves. And yet how much meaning humans have built around it. Fire, breath, and wonder. The same trilogy that began our story in the last campfire still burns here. You look up at the pale sky, thinking about how that same smoke will someday rise from temples, palaces, and battlefields. But for now, it's still innocent, still a whisper between earth and sky. You take a deep breath, the last one before stepping into the next era, where the smoke will follow merchants, wanderers, and dreamers across mountains. You don't know it yet, but you're walking toward the Silk Road. You walk along a narrow trail carved by generations of traders, the horizon hazy with dust and heat. The air hums with movement, hooves, cart wheels, the rhythmic creak of woven packs brushing against each other. You're now traveling one of the earliest arteries of global exchange, what will one day be called the Silk Road. But right now, it's not just silk that's moving. It's seeds, spices, stories, and ideas. And tucked among them, small and humble, are the seeds of cannabis. They ride in the corners of saddlebags, hidden among peppercorns, or mixed with flax to avoid notice. No one calls it contraband, it's just another plant. Though one that always seems to bring a little laughter wherever it goes. You follow a caravan through the mountains of Central Asia. The path snakes between cliffs and valleys, painted gold by the setting sun. The traders speak dozens of languages, their words blending into a single song of haggling, gossip, and prayer. They trade salt, jade silk, and sometimes small bundles of dried herbs wrapped in cloth. Some call it the warming leaf, others ski root. It doesn't matter the name, everyone knows it by scent. One whiff of that musky sweetness, and faces soften, eyes half close. And the long road feels just a little shorter. Historians still argue whether the Silk Road was the main highway for cannabis's global spread, or if it had already reached distant lands through older migrations. But the pattern is clear: wherever humans built fires, hemp found its place beside them. You pause at one of these fires now, seated among travelers from Persia, India, and China. One man stirs a pot of spiced milk over the coals and drops a pinch of green powder into it. He grins, offering you a cup. You sip cautiously. It's earthy, almost grassy, but as the warmth spreads through your chest, so does an unexpected calm. The chatter around you seems to drift like music. This was no mere accident of trade. It was a quiet revolution of mood. Cannabis traveled not just in cargo, but in culture. It carried stories, songs, and shared rituals. The same plant used for rope in one region was smoked for vision in another and brewed as medicine somewhere else. You can almost feel the web of humanity tightening. Strands of trade and tradition crossing continents, binding people through a shared curiosity about the ways smoke could shift the world. The mainstream fact here is that by around 500 BCE, hemp was already present in China, India, Persia, and parts of Eastern Europe. Its fibers were prized for durability, its seeds for nutrition, and its flowers for mystery. Ancient texts even mention it by name. The Chinese called it ma, a plant of dual nature, both yin and yang, healing and intoxicating. The quirky detail: some traders reportedly chewed raw cannabis flowers on long journeys to ease boredom. Kind of like how truckers today keep coffee or energy drinks handy. The result, according to one dusty inscription, was cheerful songs and confused footsteps. As the caravan moves, you watch how smoke becomes a kind of currency. In mountain camps, strangers share it as an introduction. In desert markets, merchants use it to celebrate deals. A few puffs, and suspicion melts into laughter. It's not hard to see how this habit built bridges before treaties ever did. You picture two rival traders sharing a pipe at dusk, both pretending they're negotiating while secretly enjoying that strange, floating calm. You pass through oasis towns, Samarkand, Bactria, Kashgar, each one a mosaic of cultures. In the air, the sense of cumin incense, and something else familiar. At one stall, you see bundles of hemp fiber, long and coarse, waiting to be spun into rope. At another, small jars of pressed oil sold for lamp fuel. You realize how adaptable this plant is. It fits into every niche, both sacred and mundane. A tool, a trade good, and a teacher, all in one stem. As you sit by the fire that night, a young man from India plucks a small flute and begins to play. The sound floats through the camp, mingling with laughter. Someone passes a clay pipe your way. You hesitate for a heartbeat, then take a breath. The smoke is softer than before, filtered through baked earth and ritual. The stars overhead shimmer like molten silver. The feeling is familiar now. That gentle hum in the back of your mind, the soft widening of perspective. It's not a high in the modern sense. It's an ancient rhythm, a sense of being perfectly here, perfectly now. You think about what connects all these people, the belief that smoke has meaning. For some, it's medicine, for others, meditation. It's remarkable how a single plant could take on so many faces. Healer, textile, symbol, and friend. And even more remarkable is that every civilization thought it discovered the secret alone. The Chinese blended it with ginseng. The Indians mixed it with milk. The Persians crushed it into resin. Yet each one came to the same conclusion: this plant opens something within. Historians still argue whether this cultural spread changed the course of spiritual thought. Did the Silk Road carry not just goods, but ideas of transcendence? Some scholars believe that cannabis helped shape early mysticism, the way people described visions, dreams, and divine contact. Maybe that's why smoke became a metaphor for prayer, something that rises and vanishes, but leaves a scent of devotion behind. The quirky bit that makes you grin. In some desert inns, travelers were charged an extra coin to sit in the sweet rooms, where hemp smoke drifted in from nearby kitchens. The innkeepers claimed it kept guests docile, easier to manage after long nights of storytelling. You imagine a rowdy caravan finally falling silent, one by one, as the smoke thickens and the stars spin lazily overhead. You lean back on a folded rug, feeling the warmth of the embers. There's something deeply human about this, the need to share fire and find calm in a chaotic world. You realize that, in a way, this plant has become the great equalizer of ancient times. Kings might own gold and silk, but even they would sit beside commoners when the pipe was passed. The smoke didn't care about status, it only asked for breath. You travel with the caravan for days, through cold passes and sunburned valleys. Each night ends the same firelight, laughter, and smoke rising into the stars. Sometimes, a storyteller spins tales of gods who gave humans the green gift as a way to ease suffering. Other times, it's just gossip about the next town. Either way, it always ends with contented sighs and slow, sleepy smiles. By now, you understand that cannabis isn't just traveling in sacks. It's embedding itself in memory. Every trader who passes through these routes carries a fragment of it home, a story, a recipe, a ritual. You can almost trace its roots spreading outward like veins through the soil. Soon it will reach temples, palaces, and farms across continents, changing how people see the world and themselves. You stop at one last camp before the desert. The caravan is thinning. Some head south toward India, others east toward China. You share a last cup of warm drink with an old merchant who has been trading hemp for decades. His beard is white, his hands calloused. He tells you, in a voice rough as gravel, that he once saw a man healed of fever after inhaling the smoke of burned hemp, leaves mixed with honey. The gods hide medicine in strange places, he says, eyes gleaming. You just have to be willing to burn a few weeds to find it. You smile, realizing that's the truth of it all. Humanity's endless experiment with the unknown. Burn something, taste something, breathe something, and see what happens. Trial and error, curiosity wrapped in ritual. And from that curiosity came connection, between people, between worlds, between body and spirit. As you lie down beneath the stars, the fire crackling beside you, the smoke drifts gently over your face. You let it in this time, no hesitation. The feeling is softer than before, like the earth itself is humming a lullaby. You look up at the endless expanse of sky and think of how many others, across miles and centuries, have done exactly this. Sat beneath this same sky, letting the same smoke blur the edges of their thoughts. You realize you're part of a very old conversation, one that began when humans first learned to play with fire. The embers glow red, like the eyes of ancient gods. Tomorrow, you'll wake and follow the caravan farther east, where new lands wait and new rituals are being born. But for now, you drift between the waking world and the dream one, both wrapped in smoke and silence. The road hums softly, the world feels wide but kind, and you, like the travelers before you, are weightless. The desert gives way to greener land, the air turning thick with life and memory. You follow the faint perfume of flowers and resin, until it leads you to stone columns and shimmering pools. Egypt rises before you like a dream carved in sunlight. The river Nile winds through its heart, carrying papyrus, perfumes, and prayers. The smoke that drifts here isn't from campfires or caravans. It's temple smoke, heavy with ritual. It stains the air with sweetness, carrying the scent of blue lotus, frankincense, myrrh, and something else. Something almost familiar from the camps and mountains behind you. You realize it's hemp again, woven into daily life, hidden in medicine, mingled with myth. Inside a temple courtyard, priests and priestesses move slowly, each step deliberate. Incense burners shaped like lotus blossoms release tendrils of scented air. The people watching outside whisper that this smoke carries their offerings to the gods. You can almost taste it, earthy, bitter, and strangely calming. The mix is no accident, every herb has purpose. In the hands of temple healers, fragrance becomes prayer, and prayer becomes medicine. You stand at the threshold, the hum of chanting vibrating through your ribs. The way the voices rise and fall reminds you of wind in a cave, of something older than civilization. Historians still argue whether the ancient Egyptians actually used cannabis in these sacred mixtures, or if it was merely hemp resin mistaken for something stronger. But the record is suggestive. Hieroglyphs mention shimshimet, a plant used in ointments to ease pain and soothe the spirit. The Ebers Papyrus, one of the world's oldest medical texts, lists a recipe to cool the uterus, using ground leaves mixed with honey, possibly hemp. Whether it was psychoactive or not, it was clearly respected, woven into both ritual and remedy. You follow one of the healers through a shadowed corridor. The walls glitter with paint and gold, telling stories of gods who walk in smoke and shadow. The healer leads you into a small chamber lit by a single oil lamp. On a low table sits a collection of jars, some filled with powdered roots, others with sticky black resin. She grinds a pinch of herbs, murmuring words that sound like river currents. She doesn't explain, she doesn't need to. You recognize the rhythm, the same human pulse that carried through the Silk Road fires, through the shaman's chants before that. She pours hot water over the powder and stirs. The scent fills the room, deep and musky. You breathe in and feel the edges of the world soften. It's not overwhelming, just a warm slide into ease, as if the air itself wants you to slow down. The healer dips her fingers into the mix and rubs it on her temples, then offers some to you. The texture is cool, almost oily. As it seeps into your skin, the tension in your shoulders fades. The gods, she whispers, speak most clearly when the mind is quiet. You realize she isn't talking about hallucinations or escape. She's describing clarity, focus, a peaceful mind as an offering. The mainstream fact of this time is that Egypt mastered aromatherapy long before the word existed. Temples doubled as clinics, and priests were doctors as much as theologians. The body and soul were treated together. Cannabis, myrrh, and blue lotus all appeared in salves, bombs, and sacred smoke. The quirky part. Some Egyptian women used powdered hemp mixed with honey as part of beauty rituals, believing it could restore youth to the face. Imagine Cleopatra dabbing a faint trace of that before a royal audience. Her perfume a subtle mix of heaven and high science. You walk deeper into the temple complex. Outside, the sun hammers down on white stone, but in here, it's cool and dark. The air hums with beeswax candles and mystery. Each room you pass smells slightly different. Some smoky, some floral, some faintly spicy. Every scent tells a story. You pause at a mural showing a god holding a lotus and a plume of incense. His eyes half-lidded, his expression serene. You think about how humans have always associated smoke with the sacred, something fleeting, beautiful, and beyond control. Historians still debate whether ancient Egyptians smoked anything in the modern sense. Pipes and rolling papers weren't part of their world, but they knew combustion, transformation, and breath. They burned offerings for purification, healing, and communication with the unseen. The ritual may not have looked like today's idea of smoking, but the essence, using plants and fire to alter awareness, was unmistakably there. As night falls, the temple shifts tone. Torches flicker, musicians begin to play soft harps, and the Nile's breeze carries in cool air. You sit near the courtyard, watching as priests carry censers shaped like cobras. The smoke that pours from them coils upward, like living creatures. The people gathered close their eyes, inhaling reverently. The effect isn't intoxication. It's unity. Hundreds of breaths moving together, hearts sensing through scent. You realize the Egyptians were experts at blending sensory experiences, color, sound, and smell, to build emotional architecture. The temple was an immersive world long before digital ones. You sit in that soundscape, half dreaming, and wonder if the gods they worshipped were simply reflections of this same awe. The way the human mind softens in the presence of beauty. Nearby, a scribe sits cross-legged, recording observations on a thin roll of papyrus. You peek over his shoulder lists of ingredients, measurements, purposes. One entry reads, roughly translated, for the calming of trimus shimshimet, honey, and oil. You can almost hear him thinking as he writes, how can something grown in dirt lift the soul? His ink dries under lamplight, but his question will echo for millennia. The quirky, almost funny part. Archaeologists found traces of cannabis pollen in mummified remains of Ramses Siwa. No one knows if it was used medicinally or simply as an environmental contaminant, but it paints an image that's hard to ignore. Maybe even pharaohs inhaled a hint of that same earthy scent you're breathing now. You leave the temple and step into the night air. The moon hangs low, mirrored in the Nile. Farmers nearby are lighting fires to keep insects away from their crops, and the scent of burning hemp stalks drifts faintly across the fields. It's comforting, like the world itself is exiling after a long day. You think about how this plant keeps appearing everywhere you go, humble yet indispensable. Rope, oil, medicine, incense. It's quietly shaping civilization. You pass through the village markets. Traders are selling clay jars filled with pressed hemp oil for lamps. Others hawk small pouches of seeds as food. A woman sits behind a stall of dyed fabrics, explaining proudly that her thread is made from the plant that bends but never breaks. Her words feel prophetic. As you continue down the narrow streets, you catch laughter from a nearby courtyard. A group of young men sits around a small fire, tossing herbs into a clay bowl. One inhales the fumes and starts singing. Off key but full of joy. The others join in, their voices echoing through the warm night. You smile. For all the grandeur of temples and pharaohs, it's moments like this. Ordinary people sharing breath and song that carry the true heartbeat of history. You pause by the riverbank before moving on. The reeds sway, whispering secrets to the water. The smoke from the fires forms thin ribbons that twist into the dark, like offerings without temples. You breathe it in one last time, and it feels like a connection. Not to gods, not even to history, but to continuity itself. You've followed this scent across continents and centuries, and it never loses meaning. You think again about the early humans by their fires, the shamans with their drums, the caravans under desert stars. It's all one story: curiosity turned to ritual, ritual turned to reverence. Each generation inherited the smoke and gave it new purpose. The Egyptians made it divine, weaving it into gold and incense. They took what was wild and taught it to sing. As you drift away from the city lights, the soft hum of crickets fills the air. You look back one last time at the silhouette of the temple against the moon. The smoke still rises in graceful columns, dissolving into night. You realize that the Egyptians didn't just worship their gods through smoke, they shaped eternity with it. Every plume that rose carried a fragment of human longing, an ancient desire to reach upward, to communicate through breath and scent. The air cools, and you pull your cloak tighter. Somewhere beyond the desert, beyond the Nile, the road stretches eastward again. The smoke trails ahead like a map, leading toward new lands, new rituals, new ways of dreaming. You take a final deep breath, savoring the sweetness that lingers in your throat, and step into the unknown. The story continues, unbroken, like the curl of smoke that never really disappears. It only changes shape. The wind turns cooler as you travel east, leaving behind the golden fields of the Nile for the bustling hum of ancient trade routes. The desert stillness gives way to noise. Bells, hooves, the crack of carts rolling over sand and stone. The Silk Road stretches ahead of you, that endless artery pulsing with stories, spices, and smoke. You walk among merchants whose goods smell like distant worlds, pepper from India, silk from China, and bundles of fragrant green herbs that look suspiciously familiar. You catch one, sniff it, and feel that same earthy calm thread through your senses again. Hemp has made the journey too. An invisible traveler carried in baskets, braided into ropes, hidden in medicine pouches. You stop beside a caravan leader whose robes shimmer with woven patterns. He gestures to a jar of dried leaves and grins. Medicine, he says, though the wink that follows suggests it might do more than cure coughs. You've seen this pattern before. Plants that heal, plants that soothe, plants that sometimes open the mind. The ancient world was full of trade, but what it really exchanged was ideas. And with those ideas came rituals. The further east you go, the more those rituals evolve. By the time you reach Persia, the air feels different, cooler, richer, perfumed with saffron and smoke. Zoroastrian fire temples glow in the distance, their flames kept burning day and night. You hear chanting carried by the wind, the language unfamiliar but the rhythm ancient. The scent of incense fills your lungs, cypress, sandalwood, and a trace of something green, sharp, and almost playful. It's not just fragrance, it's philosophy made visible. Fire, in this world, isn't just warmth, it's divine presence, eternal truth. Historians still argue whether cannabis was part of these Persian rites, or if its use came later with nomads and healers. But old texts hint at Hauma, a sacred plant that brought enlightenment and courage. Scholars debate endlessly about what Hauma actually was: ephedra, poppy, cannabis, or some forgotten hybrid. The ingredients may be uncertain, but the purpose was clear: to touch the divine through the senses. And as you breathe that air thick with ceremonial smoke, You feel the line blur between ritual and experience, myth and chemistry. One evening, a scholar in long robes invites you into a candlelit study. His shelves are stacked with scrolls, some older than memory itself. He pours you a drink, a golden liquid, bitter yet comforting, and explains that the sacred drink of the ancients connects the breath of man to the breath of the stars. You sip, and for a fleeting second, the room seems to hum. The patterns on the walls pulse faintly, and you can almost hear the cadence of the desert itself whispering in your ears. Maybe it's imagination, or maybe the ancients truly knew something we've only begun to rediscover. The mainstream fact here: ancient Persia's spiritual system centered on duality. Light versus darkness, purity versus chaos. Fire was sacred because it symbolized knowledge, the divine spark. Ritual drinks like Homer, regardless of their exact ingredients, were designed to amplify that spark. People believed that consuming the right plants aligned them with truth, gave them insight, and perhaps even immortality. The quirky part: some priests would drink so much of the sacred brew before ceremony that they would hear the music of fire. A poetic way to describe what might have been an intense, plant-induced trance. As night deepens, you travel with a small group of nomads. Their campfire burns low, and one of them pulls a pouch from his cloak, sprinkling its contents onto the embers. The smoke that rises is familiar, soft, spicy, and somehow comforting. He grins at you through the haze, his eyes glinting with mischief. Keeps the scorpions away, he says, though the laughter that follows suggests he knows it does a bit more than that. You sit together, the stars blazing like white fire overhead. For a long time, no one speaks. You simply watch the smoke curl toward the sky, the air vibrating with a sense of shared quiet. Somewhere in that stillness, you realize that the journey of this plant isn't just about intoxication or medicine. It's about connection. Every civilization that's touched it has used it to bridge the gap between Earth and the beyond. To the Persians, it was holy. To the Egyptians, divine. To the nomads, it was a friend on the road, a way to ease loneliness and bring laughter to the night. Historians still debate when exactly cannabis began its role as a recreational or sacred plant in the Middle East, but traces in ancient Scythian burial mounds, charred seeds, and gold smoking vessels suggest a timeline that stretches deep into prehistory. The Scythians, fierce horsemen of the steppe, would set up small tents after battle, toss cannabis seeds on red, hot stones, and inhale the vapor. Herodotus, writing around 440 BCE, claimed they shouted for joy as the smoke filled their lungs. You can't help but smile at that image. Warriors dancing in a cloud of laughter after the chaos of combat. You follow their trail across the grasslands. The night sky feels enormous here, swallowing the horizon. You crouch beside one of their makeshift saunas. Just a pit lined with stones, and a few remnants of charred seeds. The air still smells faintly of resin and ash. You imagine their world, fast, brutal, and beautiful. Life measured by the speed of a horse, and the reach of an arrow. In that rhythm, maybe a little euphoria wasn't luxury. It was survival. You meet a young Scythian woman tending to her horses. Her eyes are sharp, her braids tied with beads. She offers you a leather pouch. Inside are small brown seeds that rattle softly. For the fires, she says. It makes the spirits dance. You watch as she pours a few onto the coals. The smoke is thick and sweet, drifting upward in ribbons. She closes her eyes and begins to hum, a low, haunting melody that seems to melt into the wind. The horses stamp softly, their breath visible in the cool air. You don't need to understand her language. The ritual speaks in sensations. The quirky detail here. Archaeologists discovered that the Scythians not only inhaled cannabis smoke, but also used it in purification ceremonies before burials. The smoke was said to cleanse the soul of dust, preparing warriors for whatever lay beyond. It's strange and beautiful. Fire and breath used to bridge the seen and unseen, again and again, across cultures. You sit there, feeling the heat of the stones, the rhythm of the humming. The stars wheel overhead. You think about how far this trail of smoke has carried you. From the shamans of ancient caves to the priests of Egypt, from temple incense to steppe fire pits. And yet, through every culture, the intention stays the same: to heal, to connect, to transcend. The nomads laugh softly as the fire dies down. One tells a story about the stars being the eyes of their ancestors, watching from the heavens. He points upward and says, "They see us when the smoke rises." You look at the thin tendrils climbing into the dark and feel something shift. A recognition that maybe, just maybe, humanity has always been talking to itself through smoke. The wind picks up, scattering embers into the night. You lie back on the cool grass, your body humming with warmth. Above you, the Milky Way spills like powdered silver. You can almost trace the trade routes just by following the constellations. You think about how knowledge, like smoke, drifts and spreads, reshaping itself as it travels. Each culture catches a wisp, breathes it in, and adds its own meaning. As dawn approaches, the nomads pack up their tents with practiced ease. The fire is left to smolder, a faint trail of smoke still curling upward. You take one last look and realize that every journey you've taken through time has been guided by that same thread. It isn't just about cannabis or incense. It's about the way humans have always sought meaning in transformation. Smoke becomes symbol, ritual becomes art, and breath becomes bridge. The caravan moves on, and you follow. The road winds east toward lands that shimmer like the edge of dreams. You can smell the faintest hint of new spices carried on the wind. Clove, cinnamon, and something else, deeper, waiting to be discovered. Somewhere beyond the horizon lies India, and with it, another chapter in this endless story of smoke and spirit. By the time you reach India, the air itself feels alive. Warm, damp, heavy with the scent of rain and spice. You follow a dirt road lined with banyan trees, so massive their roots seem to hold up the sky. Monkeys chatter overhead. Parrots flash green through the canopy. And in the distance, the hum of temple bells ripples like a heartbeat. This is a land where smoke doesn't just drift. It dances. Every curl seems to have purpose. You catch its scent before you see it, sweet, grassy, faintly burnt. The same familiar thread that's followed you across deserts and rivers. Hemp, or as they call it here, bang. The first thing you notice is that people don't treat it like a secret. In the crowded markets, men sit cross-legged behind brass pots, grinding green paste with milk, spices, and sugar. They sell it openly, smiling as they pour the thick, emerald drink into clay cups. You watch a young man gulp one down, his grin wide and unbothered, before he disappears into the festival crowd. Drums thump in the distance, and laughter spills through the air. It's Holi, the festival of colors, and smoke rises everywhere, tinted pink and blue with powdered dye. You're pulled into the rhythm before you realize it. Someone presses a cup of bang into your hands. You hesitate, then sip. It's sweet, almost floral, with a faint bitterness underneath. The warmth hits your throat, then spreads slowly through your chest, your limbs, your thoughts. The world softens, edges blur. Every sound feels layered. Music, bells, laughter, the flutter of birds. You blink and everything seems to shimmer. It's not chaos, it's connection. You feel, for a fleeting moment, perfectly part of everything. The mainstream fact: India's relationship with cannabis is among the oldest recorded. Ancient texts like the Atharva Veda describe it as one of the 5 sacred plants, a gift from the gods to promote happiness, freedom, and courage. The plant was linked with Shiva, the ascetic god who meditates in the mountains, covered in ash, wild hair coiled like smoke. Devotees say he discovered cannabis himself, using it to focus his mind during meditation. Even today, in the foothills of the Himalayas, wandering monks, sadhus, sit in circles passing chillums, clay pipes blackened with ash, invoking Shiva's name before every puff. You meet one such sadhu by the banks of the Ganges. His beard is long, his eyes calm, his body painted with ash. He sits cross-legged beside a small fire, grinding herbs in his palm. He looks up and smiles as you approach. "You've followed the smoke a long way," he says softly, as if he's been expecting you. He sprinkles the mixture into the pipe, holds it to the fire, and draws deeply. The smoke curls from his lips in delicate spirals. He passes it to you without a word. You inhale slowly. The scent is rich, earthy, and ancient. It fills your chest like a sigh. The river's murmur deepens. The flicker of the fire seems to slow. Everything around you becomes a single, pulsing rhythm. "Do you see it?" he whispers. "The world breathing with you." You nod, though words feel unnecessary. Historians still argue whether this was truly the origin of spiritual cannabis use, or if it merely grew out of older rituals absorbed along trade routes. But here, it's not about argument, it's about experience. The sadhu explains that smoke is prayer, and prayer is breath. "You offer your breath," he says, "hoard the gods offer calm." He smiles at your puzzled look. "Don't think so much. Just be." The quirky part. In some rural villages, even animals are offered a taste of bang during festivals. Farmers feed their oxen and goats small doses before harvest to bless the work. It's both charming and a little absurd, but it shows how deeply the plant is woven into daily life. Not feared, not hidden, just accepted as part of existence. You walk through a small town the next day, and the smell of cannabis mingles with cardamom and sandalwood. The temples are painted bright red and gold, their courtyards filled with smoke and song. Children run past, their faces smeared with colored powder. You pass a priest preparing incense for a ceremony. He crushes flowers, resin, and herbs, mixing them carefully. He adds a pinch of green powder that you recognize instantly. He notices your glance and nods. "It helps the prayers rise higher," he says simply. You linger as the ceremony begins. Bells ring, conch shells blow, and the air thickens with sweet smoke. You close your eyes and listen. The hum of chanting, the clatter of cymbals, the heartbeat of the drums. The scent wraps around you, grounding yet uplifting. You think of the Egyptian temples, the Scythian tents, the Persian firers, all different, yet somehow the same. Different languages, different gods, but one shared ritual, the breath of earth meeting the breath of humans. As night falls, you join a group of travelers sitting under the stars. They pass around a small clay chillum, the flame flickering between hands like shared light. Each person takes a puff, muttering, "Bam Bam Bolo," a cry to Lord Shiva. You follow their rhythm, the smoke warming your lungs. You exhale slowly and watch the vapor rise against the deep indigo sky. Someone starts to sing, a low, rhythmic chant. It feels less like a song and more like a heartbeat turned into sound. You glance at the mountains in the distance, their silhouettes like sleeping giants. Somewhere up there, hermits sit in caves, inhaling the same smoke, chasing the same stillness. You realize how long humans have been doing this, trying to quiet the noise of the world, to touch something vast and wordless. Maybe this plant wasn't just discovered. It was always waiting, like a gentle key, in case humanity forgot how to breathe deeply. The mainstream fact, continues Bung, wasn't just recreational. It was medicinal too. Ancient Ayurvedic healers prescribed it for digestion, pain, and anxiety. Even Queen Victoria's own physician centuries later would recommend cannabis tinctures based on these same principles. India, in that sense, never saw a dividing line between medicine and spirituality. Healing was both physical and divine. You stop by a healer's hut, where clay pots line the walls. He's grinding herbs, murmuring under his breath. When you ask what he's making, he says, a balm for the restless mind. He dips a finger in the paste and hands you a bit. It smells of cloves and resin. You rub it between your fingers. It warms your skin, releasing a faint, grassy scent beneath the spice. The plant listens, he says, smiling. You just have to ask kindly. Historians still debate how cannabis moved from sacred ritual into folk medicine. But the evidence here blurs that boundary completely. To the villagers, the gods lived in every leaf, so healing and worship were the same act. You wander through the countryside, past rice paddies and groves of mango trees. In the distance, you see small shrines standing alone, draped in marigolds. Smoke rises from each one. The breeze carries faint laughter and prayer. You realize you've entered a culture where the sacred isn't confined to temples. It spills into the streets, into homes, into the air itself. Later, at a riverside village, you meet a group of women grinding hemp seeds for oil. Their bangles clink as they work. One of them laughs, saying it keeps their skin soft and their husbands calm. You can't tell if she's joking, but the sound of her laughter lingers, bright as sunlight. It's a small, human detail, one that cuts through all the ancient grandeur. You lie on the grass that night, the scent of bang still faint on your breath. The stars shimmer above, reflected in the slow, moving river beside you. You think of Shiva, half god, half wanderer, sitting in eternal meditation, smoke swirling around him like thought made visible. Maybe he wasn't just a deity, but an idea. The reminder that stillness isn't empty, it's full of awareness. The sound of temple bells echoes faintly across the water. You close your eyes and let the rhythm pull you inward. You're not high, not dreaming, just drifting. You feel centuries of voices layered in your breath, priests, healers, warriors, wanderers, all of them chasing the same thing, a sense of calm in a chaotic world. As the night deepens, you realize you've come to understand something essential. The plant itself isn't the magic. It's what it represents, the longing for balance, for quiet, for the gentle reminder that everything, body, mind, spirit, is connected by a single breath. You exhale slowly, and the smoke fades into the sky, merging with the mist above the river. When you open your eyes again, dawn is spreading gold across the horizon. The air smells fresh, damp, alive. Somewhere, another festival is beginning. You can already hear distant drums. The road ahead shimmers in the morning light, and you feel that same tug, the one that keeps pulling you forward through time. East again, perhaps toward China, where the next chapter of this journey waits, rising like smoke from another ancient fire. You wake to the sound of bamboo rustling and the faint chatter of birds you don't recognize. The road ahead has changed again. Wider, smoother, lined with cypress trees that lean gracefully toward a horizon wrapped in mist. China rises before you like a watercolor dream, each brushstroke made of mountains, tea fields, and drifting clouds. The air here feels sacred even before you reach a temple, and yet, beneath the scent of jasmine and pine, you can still catch that subtle trace of hemp. The same familiar whisper that has followed you across continents. Farmers in straw hats work quietly in the fields, their movements steady and rhythmic. You watch as one gathers tall green stalks, strips their fibers, and lays them out to dry. When you ask what it's for, he smiles and replies, paper, rope, and healing oil. In his tone, there's no mystique, no taboo. To him, hemp is as ordinary and essential as rice or water. You've entered one of humanity's oldest centers of cultivation, a place where the plant was domesticated not for escape, but for endurance. Historians know this much for certain. China was among the first civilizations to truly master hemp. As early as 4000 BCE, they were weaving its fibers into cloth, twisting it into bowstrings, and later, crushing it into pulp to make the earliest paper. The mainstream fact here is that one of the world's greatest inventions, paper, was born from this same plant that travelers once burned to calm their spirits. Knowledge itself, you think, owes part of its life to smoke and fiber. You make your way through a small village where the houses are built of wood and stone, their walls perfumed with cooking herbs. In one home, a healer tends to a patient lying on a straw mat. She mixes a paste in a porcelain bowl, ginger, ginseng, and ground hemp seeds. She spreads it gently across the patient's swollen knee, humming as she works. You recognize the ritual rhythm in her motions. Healing, here, is music as much as medicine. The quirky part. Ancient Chinese physicians recommended hemp seed not just for pain, but for constipation. Their medical texts, like the Shenong Ben So Jing, one of the oldest pharmacopoeias, described it as neutral and balancing. It nourished the yin, the feminine principle of calm and coolness. Imagine that a plant seen in other lands as a spiritual key was here valued for helping digestion. Every culture finds its own truth in the same leaf. Historians still argue whether psychoactive cannabis was used widely in ancient China or reserved for certain rituals. Some evidence suggests it appeared in Taoist practices, where monks used smoke or incense to aid meditation and spirit travel. The goal wasn't intoxication. It was alignment with nature. Taoism, after all, is about balance, flow, the subtle dance of opposites. You picture a Taoist sage sitting on a mountain peak, inhaling the faint smoke of burning hemp, exiling philosophy into the wind. You climb a trail that leads to a monastery perched above the clouds. The monks there greet you silently, their heads shaved, their robes the color of dust and dawn. One gestures for you to sit beside a small brazier. Inside it, herbs smolder quietly, releasing an aroma that's both sharp and soothing. The monk closes his eyes and begins to breathe deeply, slow and steady, each inhale a wave, each exhale a surrender. You join him, and the world narrows to that rhythm, the rise and fall of breath, the curl of smoke. He eventually speaks, voice calm as the air. The plant teaches patience, he says. It grows slowly, but it never struggles. It bends, never breaks. His words remind you of something you heard in Egypt, something a woman at the market said about hemp thread. Different land, same wisdom. You realize this plant has become a living metaphor, resilience made tangible. Outside, you hear wind chimes ringing softly. The smoke from the brazier drifts out the open window, carrying your thoughts with it. You watch as it fades into mist and wonder if ancient Chinese poets felt the same fascination. Maybe that's why their verses so often mention clouds, breath, and drifting things, because they saw in smoke the same lesson, that life itself offers impermanence. The monk leads you through the monastery gardens. Hemp grows beside medicinal herbs, peonies, licorice root, chrysanthemum. Bees hum lazily between them. You touch a hemp leaf, rough but tender, and think about how every culture finds its own rhythm of reverence. Here, spirituality isn't loud or fiery. It's quiet, deliberate, like water finding its way through stone. Later, you visit a marketplace near the river. The stalls overflow with color, silks, spices, and scrolls. A calligrapher sits cross-legged, dipping his brush into ink and gliding it across a sheet of hemp paper. He smiles at your curiosity. Paper from the plant that bends, he says proudly. It remembers every stroke. You watch the characters bloom under his hand, elegant, fluid, alive. Words carried by the same fibers once burned in ancient temples. You pass another stall where an old woman sells jars of hemp oil. She insists it keeps joints supple and minds clear. You can eat it, rub it, or burn it, she says. Every part has purpose. You realize she's describing not just a plant, but a philosophy. The Chinese didn't divide the sacred and the practical. They were two sides of the same leaf. Historians still debate whether early Chinese alchemists experimented with cannabis in their quest for immortality. Some records suggest they used it alongside other herbs in elixirs designed to lift the spirit beyond form. Others argue that the psychoactive strains never existed here in abundance. Whatever the truth, the symbolism remained. The plant as a bridge between body and spirit, nature and eternity. As dusk settles, you sit on a hill overlooking the valley. The landscape glows gold under the sinking sun. Farmers are burning the remains of the harvest, and the air fills with smoke. You inhale the scent, sweet, earthy, a little bitter, and feel time fold in on itself. Somewhere below, you can hear a flute playing. The melody is soft and circular, looping back on itself like breath. You realize that for thousands of years, this same scene has played out, people living, working, and dreaming in harmony with the land, using smoke as both signal and solace. You think back to the first fires, the Scythian tents, the sawdust by the river. Every culture has found a reason to lift smoke to the sky, sometimes in prayer, sometimes in joy, sometimes in sheer wonder. The Chinese added something unique to that legacy: stillness. Where others sought vision or ecstasy, they sought balance. You breathe that in, and feel it settle somewhere deep inside you. The quirky detail that makes you smile. Ancient Chinese weavers believed that hemp fabric brought good fortune. They used it for burial shrouds, believing the soul would travel more peacefully wrapped in something so humble and strong. Even death, they thought, deserved softness. Night falls, and lanterns begin to glow along the riverbanks. You walk among them, each flame flickering like a memory. Families gather on small boats, releasing paper lanterns into the water. They drift slowly downstream, their reflections rippling like liquid stars. The air smells faintly of resin and oil, the smoke curling upward toward constellations that look the same as they did over Egypt, over Persia, over the endless steppes. You realize the world is smaller than it seems, bound together not by empires, but by breath. You stop beside one last lantern before it floats away. On its surface, written in delicate brushstrokes, is a single character: peace. The flame inside trembles, then steadies. You watch until it fades into distance, swallowed by night and reflection. The journey doesn't feel linear anymore. Time has turned soft, circular, like the smoke you've been chasing. You stand there in the quiet, the river whispering beside you, the scent of hemp and incense lingering in your hair. The plant that once tethered shamans to spirits, pharaohs to gods, and monks to balance has now tethered you to every soul that ever exhaled a prayer into the dark. The wind carries a hint of salt now, the promise of a coastline not far ahead. You can almost hear the gulls calling, the slow rhythm of waves. Beyond China, there are islands where the ritual will take new shape, where smoke will meet sea air and take on another form entirely. You shoulder your pack and smile, knowing that wherever you go next, the thread remains unbroken, woven through time, across oceans, and into every breath humanity has ever taken. The road to the islands is a shimmering ribbon of mist, the air thick with salt and the steady breath of the sea. You travel east, following the wind that once carried monks, merchants and whispers of foreign gods. The hemp fields fade behind you, replaced by waves that stretch forever, their surfaces glinting like hammered bronze beneath a pale sun. You can taste the shift in the air, the sharp tang of ocean spray mixed with something faintly resinous, familiar. The scent is faint but there, a ghost of the same plant that has followed you across empires. Somewhere ahead, new rituals wait, older than any written word, and wilder than the quiet order of China's mountains. When you reach Japan, the world feels younger and older all at once. The islands breathe differently here. The forests grow thicker, the air hums with spirits. You can sense a reverence woven into every sound. The cicadas, the wind in the cedars, the whisper of temple bells carried miles on the breeze. People bow not just to gods, but to trees, rocks, and rivers. You realize quickly this is a land where the divine hides in everything. And hemp, asa, as it's called here, has long been its quiet symbol. Your first sight of it is in a Shinto shrine, a small one built from cypress and silence. White paper streamers hang from the eaves, fluttering gently. Near the entrance, a priestess in red and white robes sweeps the ground with slow, precise movements. Around her waist, you notice a rope, thick, pale, and braided. It's hemp. You ask about it, and she tells you, it marks purity. It keeps the sacred separate from the ordinary. You feel a shiver. For centuries, the plant has been burned, eaten, smoked, worshipped. But here, it becomes a boundary between worlds. The shimanawa, she explains, is made from hemp fiber, stretched across gates and altars to signify the presence of kami, divine spirits. Every shrine, from the smallest forest shrine to the grandest temples at eyes, uses hemp in its rituals. The priestess's words drift like incense. Hemp binds purity. It drives away evil. Even its smoke cleanses. You think of Scythian tents, of Indian fires, of Taoist monks. The plant is always there. A vessel for transformation. Smoke as purification, fiber as order. She invites you to stay for the evening ceremony. As the sun sinks, the air turns gold, and the sound of drums begins. The rhythm builds slowly, like footsteps through fog. Dancers move around the altar, their sleeves flowing, faces calm but intense. One carries a bundle of hemp stalks. Another swings a small censer, releasing thin curls of fragrant smoke. You close your eyes, breathing it in. It's subtle, earthy, sweet, grounding. The priestess begins to chant in a voice so soft it feels like memory. The smoke rises, twining with her words, and you feel as if the island itself is exhaling through her. Hemp in Japan was never a taboo. It was a thread of daily life. For centuries, it clothed emperors and farmers alike, wrapped newborns for protection, and purified newlyweds before their first night together. The Japanese believed hemp carried purity and strength. Its fibers, strong yet supple, symbolized resilience. In ancient times, the emperor himself sent hemp offerings to major shrines to honor the sun goddess Amaterasu. You imagine him in a white robe of hemp cloth, walking toward the altar, the dawn breaking behind him like a promise. But the story deepens. Before Buddhism arrived, Japan's spirituality was raw, animistic. Every rock and stream had a soul, every storm a message. When Buddhist monks from China and Korea brought new teachings across the sea, the two faiths didn't clash, they wove together. Hemp became part of both traditions, a sacred offering in Shinto, a symbol of simplicity and non-attachment in Buddhist monastic life. Monks used hemp robes for their purity, for their connection to the earth. In their quiet cells, the fiber rustled softly as they moved, a whisper of devotion. You walk through the countryside and see the remnants of that heritage. Farmers drying hemp stalks along wooden racks, women spinning fibers by hand, their laughter mixing with the hum of cicadas. In one village, an old man shows you how they used to twist hemp into cords for fishing nets. It doesn't rot in salt water, he says proudly. You think about that. A plant that resists decay, that endures even where others fail. There's poetry in that resilience. You stop at a mountain temple near Nara, where an elderly monk tells you a story about a traveling ascetic who used to burn hemp flowers as an offering before meditation. He believed the smoke helped bridge the gap between the body and the spirit, the monk says with a faint smile. But not for escape, for awareness. He pauses, looking at the mountain fog. The smoke shows what is fleeting. The fiber reminds us of what holds. That duality, ephemeral and enduring, seems to define everything here. In the nearby village, you watch a craftsman weave hemp cloth on a wooden loom. The sound is soft, rhythmic, hypnotic. You realize the loom's rhythm echoes the drum beats from the shrine, the breathing of the monk, the pulse of the tide. It's as if the entire land moves to one continuous thread of rhythm, woven from sound, smoke, and fiber. The quirky part. In ancient Japan, Brides carried small hemp tassels in their hair during weddings to ensure fertility and protection. The tassels symbolized purity and the wish for a harmonious union. Even today, you find hemp cords tied around wrists during New Year's festivals, reminders of renewal and continuity. Hemp is everywhere, woven into clothes, burned in rituals, scattered in fields to bless the soil. As you travel north, the landscape changes, colder, rougher. The wind carries mist and sea spray. In Amori, you find a remote shrine where the priests keep an ancient practice alive, the burning of asa bundles to cleanse bad spirits after funerals. The ceremony is simple. The hemp is lit, its smoke thick and fragrant. The mourners bow as the priest waves the smoke toward them, chanting prayers of release. It's not grief that fills the air, but peace. You watch as the smoke rises into the grey sky, carrying farewells into the unseen. You realize this island chain is a crossroads of spirit and survival. While hemp was sacred in ritual, it was also vital in trade and craft. Samurai armor was laced with hemp cord. Fishermen relied on hemp rope. Peasants slept on hemp mats. Yet through all its practical uses, it never lost its purity. In Japan's mind, the sacred and the mundane never separated. They coexisted in quiet harmony. The night before you leave, you visit a hill overlooking the sea. Lanterns float across the waves below, released in honor of the ancestors. You light your own, its paper shell thin and trembling, and watch it drift away. The breeze carries the faint smell of burning hemp from a nearby temple. It mingles with the salt air, and you breathe it in. One last offering, one last lesson. The light on the water flickers, like the memory of every fire you've stood beside. You think of the Scythians, tents filled with laughter and steam. The Egyptian tombs perfumed with resin. The Indian ascetics by the river. The Taoist sages in their mountain halls. And now, the Japanese priestesses bowing before their braided cords. Each place gave the plant a different meaning, but the feeling was always the same, a reaching towards something just beyond the visible, something vast and unspoken. In the distance, a bell rings. It's deep, resonant, and slow. You feel it in your ribs. The sound rolls over the hills and fades into the sea. You realize the journey has taught you something subtle. That smoke is just the visible breath of connection. A sign that something once alive is transforming into something unseen. Hemp, in all its forms, rope, paper, oil, incense, has always carried that truth. It bridges life and death, matter and spirit, human and divine. When you rise the next morning, the sky is pale pink. Fishermen are already at work, hauling nets that glisten in the dawn. You walk down to the beach and watch them, the ropes coiled neatly in their hands. The hemp fibers gleam damp and strong, unbroken despite years of salt and strain. You pick up a loose strand, turning it between your fingers. It feels like a thread connecting everything you've witnessed. Ancient fires, sacred chants, whispered prayers. You toss it back into the sea and watch as it drifts away, pulled by the tide toward the horizon. Somewhere beyond that horizon lies another shore, another story waiting to be told. You smile, feeling the soft wind brush your face. It carries the faintest trace of smoke, the same scent that began your journey, now grown wiser, quieter. You realize that this isn't just history you're walking through, it's memory. Collective, breathing, eternal. And as the waves erase your footprints one by one, you feel a deep calm settle in. You've followed the smoke across continents, and it has led you here, to stillness. You step out of the misty dawn of the Japanese islands and into a swirl of desert wind. The air turns dry, almost electric, and the horizon glows with the shimmer of sand and gold. The scent of salt and hemp fades, replaced by dates, myrrh, and roasted coffee beans. Somewhere ahead, the call to prayer drifts like smoke over rooftops and domes, echoing through centuries. You find yourself in the beating heart of the medieval Middle East. Baghdad, Cairo, Damascus. cities that gleam like jewels in the mind's eye. And here, under the crescent moon and endless stars, smoke takes on a new life, fragrant, poetic, and dangerous. You walk through a bustling bazaar as the sun sets. Lanterns ignite one by one, painting the market in gold and amber. Traders shout in a dozen tongues: Persian, Arabic, Greek, while the scent of spices clings to the air like perfume. Then, faint but unmistakable, you catch that earthy sweetness again. You follow it down a narrow alley where laughter hums low and lazy. Inside a dimly lit corner, men recline on carpets, smoke curling from long, stemmed pipes. The glow from the bowls flickers across their faces, painting them in bronze halos. Someone strums an oud softly, its notes mingling with the smoke until you can't tell which is sound and which is air. Hashish has found its voice here. It's no longer just a ritual tool or sacred incense. It's art, rebellion, solace. You sit among them, and one of the men hands you a clay pipe with a grin. For the night to make sense, he says. You smile, not because you understand, but because you feel the truth in his tone. As the smoke rises, the room slows. Conversations become rivers, flowing lazily from philosophy to nonsense and back again. A poet begins to recite verses, each one smooth and hypnotic stories of lovers made of light, of gardens that bloom in the dark. You realize this isn't just a pastime, it's an awakening wrapped in laughter. Historians still argue whether the earliest hashish culture began in Persia or Egypt. What's certain is that it blossomed fully under Islamic rule, especially in Sufi circles and mystical brotherhoods that saw in the herb a path to divine ecstasy. The Quran forbade alcohol, but hashish lived in the grey between body and soul. For some, it was a poison. For others, a bridge. The Sufis called it the green key. A way to quiet the ego and glimpse the infinite. You find yourself in Cairo, centuries ago, walking beneath the great citadel. The streets hum with music, prayer, and the sound of distant camels. Here, hashish houses, makashish, operate in plain sight. Inside, men sit in circles sharing small clay pipes, speaking softly about love and fate. You overhear one man say, "Hashish teaches patience. It shows you that the world is both fast and still." Another replies with a smile. Or, maybe it just slows fools enough to listen. The laughter that follows is warm and knowing. You realize that even in its haze, there's a current of wisdom here, a philosophy shaped by smoke. The scholarly debate over cannabis in the Islamic world remains tangled. Some say it began as medicine, brought by Persian physicians who used hemp to ease pain and sorrow. Others argue it entered through India, carried by mystics who merged their bang rituals with Sufi practice. What's undeniable is how quickly it wove into the cultural fabric. It inspired poetry, influenced music, and much to the annoyance of rulers, encouraged people to question everything, especially authority. The rulers, of course, noticed. At various times, hashish was banned, burned, and cursed from the pulpits. Sultan Baybars of Egypt famously outlawed it in the 13th century, ordering fields destroyed and users punished. Yet, like smoke through cracks, it always returned. The bans never lasted long. The plant was too adaptable, too beloved, and perhaps too honest, because hashish didn't care for hierarchies or crowns. It belonged to the people, to beggars, poets, soldiers, mystics, and merchants. One night, you sit by the Nile. The water glows silver under the moon. A group of young men nearby sing softly, passing a pipe between them. They tell a story about Hassan I Saba, the so-called old man of the mountain, who allegedly used hashish to inspire visions in his followers, the legendary assassins. The tale is half truth, half myth. The kind of story that slips between fact and legend like sand between fingers. Historians still argue whether those assassins were ever truly high, or whether the tale was propaganda spun by fearful crusaders. Either way, the myth endured, shaping centuries of imagination. You smile. Myths like smoke, never need proof. They just need to linger. You drift through Damascus next, into a courtyard shaded by fig trees. A Sufi gathering is beginning. The men wear simple robes, their eyes bright and serene. In the center sits a teacher, his voice low and melodic. "The seek not escape," he says, "but union." The smoke helps us listen to what cannot be heard. Around you, bowls are passed, and the scent rises again. Sweet, grassy ancient. You inhale and feel time loosen its grip. The chanting begins slow at first, then faster, spiraling upward until it becomes rhythm itself. The world narrows to breath, sound, and pulse. In that moment, you understand why so many spiritual traditions found meaning in smoke. It isn't the plant alone. It's the ritual, the surrender, the shared stillness. The Sufis danced with it, the scholars debated it, the rulers feared it. But for ordinary people, it was simply a reminder that joy could exist even in a hard world. The quirky part of this era, hashish cafes, became the social hubs of the Islamic Golden Age. Poets composed entire collections dedicated to the herb. In one 14th century text, a writer claims hashish makes a man sing even when his heart is broken. Another insists it's the friend of patience and the mother of laughter. You imagine these men sitting under lanterns, their fingers stained with ink and resin, their minds wandering between love poems and cosmic jokes. The hum of conversation, the rattle of dice, the soft bubbling of pipes, it's the heartbeat of an age. One evening, you follow a storyteller into a courtyard lit by oil lamps. He begins a tale about a foolish merchant who smoked too much hashish and imagined himself a king. When he awoke, he was still poor, but he had laughed so hard that he no longer cared. The crowd erupts in chuckles, not because they pity the merchant, but because they understand him. Sometimes, laughter is its own kind of wealth. You travel westward, through North Africa, where the air turns thick with spice and sea salt. In Morocco, you find mountain villages where farmers grow cannabis in terraces carved into red hillsides. They've been doing it for centuries, the knowledge passed from father to son. The resin, they say, protects the plant from heat and pests, but to them, it's also a gift, something to be shaped into kif or pressed into blocks of fragrant hash. You join them for a meal, sitting cross, legged on woven mats, eating flatbread and olives. Afterward, they light a pipe, and the conversation drifts into the stars. Someone says, "Smoke teaches patience. You can't rush a puff, or a life." You nod, feeling the weight of that truth. Night falls, and you find yourself walking through Fez. Its alleys alive with whispers. Somewhere, someone is playing a flute. Somewhere else, laughter spills into the street. You realize the world you're moving through is not divided by nation or language. It's held together by the same ritual gesture, the sharing of smoke, the slowing of breath. From the highlands of Persia to the deserts of Arabia, from Nile to Atlas Mountains, this act repeats. A small defiance against time. As the centuries turn, smoke and story become inseparable. The tales of 1,001 nights echo with its presence. Courts filled with perfumes and secrets. Rooftop gatherings where the air hums with laughter and dreams. You can almost see Scheherazade herself, pausing mid-story, her words mingling with the faint scent of hashish drifting from the lamps. Her voice, like the smoke, weaves a spell, both meant to keep the night alive a little longer. You sit once more beside the desert, stars sprawled across the sky like spilled salt. The sand is cool beneath your hands, the air still. You think of all the fires you've knelt beside. The Scythians, the Egyptians, the Indians, the Chinese, the Japanese. And how this chapter feels like their culmination. The plant has transformed with each culture, but here it feels at home, not worshipped, not feared, simply lived with. You breathe deeply, the night wrapping around you. The wind shifts, carrying the distant scent of resin and jasmine. In that moment, you realize something beautiful. Every civilization that embraced smoke, in one way or another, sought not escape but connection. To each other, to the divine, to the rhythm of being alive. The smoke just gave them a way to see what was always there. The stars above shimmer like 1,000 slow, burning embers. You close your eyes and feel the warmth of the sand, the whisper of the wind, and the hum of ancient laughter echoing faintly across the dunes. Somewhere in that sound, time folds in on itself. The past feels near enough to touch. The dunes fade to green. The horizon ripples with grasslands that stretch wider than oceans, dotted with drums, huts, and firelight that pulses like a heartbeat beneath the stars. You follow the wind as it carries distant singing, the kind that rises from deep inside the ribs and makes even the earth seem to listen. The air is thicker here, rich with smoke that smells of wood, herbs, and something faintly sweet. Something you've known since your first step in this journey. It is the familiar whisper of the plant that refuses to be forgotten. You've crossed deserts, temples, palaces, and shrines, and now you've arrived on a continent that has been speaking to spirits through smoke since memory began. Africa. The rhythm greets you before the people do. The drums speak like language, and you start to hear meaning in their patterns. Invocation, laughter, mourning, welcome. When you finally reach the village, the fires are already lit, the air painted gold with embers. A woman motions for you to sit. Her eyes glint like molten bronze, and in her hand, she holds a wooden pipe carved with faces of ancestors. You travel with the wind, she says, handing it to you. The bowl glows faintly. You inhale, and the smoke rolls over your tongue like history itself. Bitter, then sweet, then endless. In these lands, smoke is more than leisure. It is lineage. You watch as men and women pass the pipe in slow circles, their movements calm, deliberate. Each puff is offered to someone unseen, an ancestor, a god, or simply the spirit of the earth itself. The night vibrates with chant and drum, a harmony that seems to come from under the ground. It's said that when people hear smoke together, they are not just sharing the plant, they are summoning memory. Historians still argue whether cannabis reached sub-Saharan Africa through Indian Ocean trade or overland via Egypt. The truth may be both. Ancient trade winds carried seeds from Asia to the Swahili coast, where sailors swapped spices, gold, and stories. By the 13th century, cannabis had rooted itself deep into African soil, spreading inland through trade routes like veins of smoke under the stars. Wherever it went, it found a purpose, ritual, medicine, peace. You travel west, crossing savannas dotted with acacia trees. In one village, a healer shows you a pouch of crushed leaves mixed with ash and clay. For spirits, she explains. For illness, for sorrow, for sleep. She burns a pinch in a clay pot, waving the smoke around your head. It smells sharp and soothing. The smoke opens the road, she says. You ask what road she means. The one between this world and the next. Her voice is soft, but it carries like a spell. You've seen smoke used for gods before, but here it feels closer, almost domestic. Woven into daily life. In East Africa, warriors once smoked before battle, believing the spirit within the plant made them fearless. Among healers, it was used to cleanse sickness and misfortune. In Central Africa, tribal chiefs smoked before judgment, believing the smoke sharpened their wisdom. You realize each use is a reflection of balance between courage and calm, body and soul. You join a ceremony one night under a full moon. The entire village gathers in a clearing, the ground soft with dust. Drums begin, slow and steady, like a heartbeat learning to dance. The chief raises a gourd pipe carved with patterns of spirals. He fills it with herbs, some you recognize, some you don't, and holds it over the fire until it smolders. As he breathes in, his eyes close, his chest rises, and for a moment, it feels like the stars hold still. Then, with a deep exhale, he blows the smoke upward. The crowd murmurs. The smoke climbs into the night like a ghost uncoiling. "It carries our song," he says, and you believe him. The quirky part. In some West African tribes, young initiates were taught to interpret the patterns that smoke made in the air, like reading dreams. A curl meant luck, a spiral meant change, a break meant warning. It was called talking smoke. You watch a boy squint into the firelight, his gaze fixed on the wisps rising from the embers. He grins suddenly. "Good hunt tomorrow," he says confidently, and the elders nod, amused. It's half superstition, half science, and entirely human. As you move south, the climate thickens, lush humid, alive with insects and rain. The Congo forests hum with energy, the kind that buzzes beneath your skin. Here, cannabis becomes both medicine and rhythm. In some tribes, healers blow smoke onto wounds, or into mouths to draw out bad spirits. You watch an elder perform it on a sick child. He chants softly, then exhales smoke across the boy's chest. When he finishes, he takes a handful of earth and sprinkles it gently over the ashes. "What leaves the breath must return to the ground," he says. You feel the truth of it in your bones. Historians still argue whether cannabis replaced older ritual plants or simply joined them. Some say it merged with native herbs, transforming ancient ceremonies. Others believe it arrived like an old friend, recognized instantly, embraced without resistance. Whatever the truth, the result is unmistakable across Africa. The plant became a bridge between body and spirit, laughter and trance, survival and serenity. In the highlands of Ethiopia, you meet Christian monks who use hemp seeds in fasting stews, protein disguised as piety. In rural Nigeria, farmers chew the leaves before long harvests for focus and endurance. Along the Zambezi, fishermen burn stalks to drive away mosquitoes, and maybe, in secret, to calm their nerves before the river's crocodile, dark waters. Even in their most practical uses, there's a quiet reverence, an understanding that the plant carries something old and patient within it. You reach the southern edge of the continent, where the wind grows cool and the ocean stretches out like liquid glass. The Khoisan people have gathered around a fire. They speak in clicks and hums that sound almost like birdsong. Their pipe is small, carved from bone. One of the elders offers it to you with a nod. "Smoke is memory," he says. You inhale. The smoke is rich, thicker than before, like honey turned to air. As it fills you, the drums begin again, slow and hypnotic. The people start to dance, not wildly, but with a grace that feels older than speech. Their feet beat soft, dust into rhythm. Their movements simple, but eternal. You notice something remarkable. No one smokes alone. Every breath is shared, every exhale part of a conversation. You've seen this pattern everywhere, but here it feels elemental. Smoke is not just a ritual. It's the language of belonging. You sit beside the fire, watching the smoke spiral upward, mingling with starlight. It's as if the sky itself is inhaling. Later, the elder tells you a story. Long ago, he says, a man climbed a mountain to ask the gods for wisdom. He brought food, water, and a fire, but he forgot words. So he burned the grass and sent them smoke. The gods answered, not with thunder, but with dreams. You smile. It sounds like every myth you've ever heard about this plant. Communication born through flame. The night deepens, and you realize you've been part of the ceremony longer than you knew. The smoke has softened the edges of time. You can't tell where laughter ends and prayer begins. Someone hums a song you don't understand, yet it vibrates inside you, as though it remembers your name. When the fire finally dies down, you lie on your back and watch the sky. The Milky Way arches overhead, a white river flowing through blackness. You think of all the places this journey has taken you. The shrines of Japan, the tents of the Scythians, the temples of Egypt, the bazaars of Arabia, and how every culture found its own reflection in the same smoke. You realize that in Africa, perhaps more than anywhere else, The plant has remained closest to its roots, unfiltered, unjudged, part of the cycle of breath and soil. At dawn, the drums fade. The first light touches the plains, washing everything in gold. The villagers are already awake, laughing, cooking, greeting the day. You see the elder again, crouched by the ashes of last night's fire. He stirs them with a stick, then looks up at you. Every fire ends, he says, but the smoke always finds its way home. You walk toward the horizon, where the sky meets the earth in a seamless blur. The air smells faintly of smoke and morning dew. You take one last deep breath, and for a moment, the taste of hemp and earth feels indistinguishable from the taste of time itself. You've followed the smoke across half the world, and now it curls around you like a promise. Eternal, invisible, alive. The smoke fades into mist as you move further east, crossing rivers that shimmer like liquid glass under the morning sun. The wind feels different here, softer, carrying the scent of salt and spice. The sound of waves becomes constant, whispering against the wooden hulls of trading ships that sway gently in the harbors of Zanzibar, Lamu, and Mombasa. The Indian Ocean breathes stories into every tide. And you start to understand that this sea is not just water. It is the bloodstream of ancient connection. The same currents that once carried silk and gold now carry something smaller, lighter, and just as powerful. The seed of a plant that changed every shore it touched. Sailors call it bang, traders call it ganja, and healers call it medicine for the soul. You follow its trail as it crosses from Africa to Arabia, India, and beyond. Threads of smoke woven into trade winds. By the time you reach the port of Gujarat, the smell of spice and sandalwood fills the air. Bells ring in distant temples, and somewhere nearby, music drifts through narrow alleys where incense curls upward like prayer. The land feels ancient, aware of its own rhythm. You have stepped into India, the heart of the plant's sacred memory. The first thing you notice is the stillness before ceremony. In the Ghats of Varanasi, priests stand at the edge of the Ganges, their heads crowned with marigolds, their hands tracing invisible circles through air thick with incense and devotion. They chant names of gods that ripple across the water. And somewhere behind them, in the shade of the temple steps, a man grinds leaves and flowers into a stone mortar. He hums softly, smiling. When the mixture is ready, he stirs it into milk, pepper, and almond paste. He hands it to you in a small clay cup. Bang, he says. Drink, and see the world as it truly is. The first sip is earthy and bitter, but then warmth spreads through you like a quiet sunrise. The river seems to slow, each ripple etched in light. Bells sound sweeter, colors deepen, and every sound feels both near and eternal. The man beside you laughs softly. You see, this is not madness. It is remembering. His voice seems to echo from the walls of time. The gods drink it, so we do too. It is how we understand their play. Bhang has existed in India for thousands of years, older than the languages used to describe it. Ancient Sanskrit texts, the Atharva Veda among them, called it one of the 5 sacred plants, a gift from the gods to relieve human suffering. Its spirit, known as Vijaya, was said to bring joy and courage, to release fear and open the heart. Warriors would consume it before battle. Ascetics would use it to still the mind during meditation. Kings and mystics alike praised it not as escape, but as insight. You spend days following the rhythm of its use. In temples, sadhus smear ash on their foreheads and sit cross, legged beside small fires, clay chillums in hand. Each puff is preceded by a chant Bom Bolanath, a cry to Lord Shiva, who is said to dwell in smoke. His eyes, half-lidded and calm, stare out from every mural and carving. He gave us this, one sadhu says, gesturing with the chillum. It is his breath. We inhale to remember him. You watch the smoke twist upward into the temple's rafters, mingling with incense and sunlight. It's not just ritual, it's relationship. Every gesture feels deliberate, alive. The sadhu offers the first puff to the sky, then to the earth, then to the four directions. Only then does he inhale. You mirror his movements, and as the smoke enters your lungs, you feel a strange clarity, a weight leaving, a silence entering. He watches you and smiles faintly. Now you understand why gods live in mountains, he says. Up there, they breathe only sky and smoke. Outside the temple, India's world is louder, but the plant is just as present. Farmers in Bengal chew on its leaves for stamina under the sun. Artists in Rajasthan stir bang into festivals of color, where laughter and pigment fill the streets like wind. During Holi, the drink becomes a symbol of celebration and divine play, of forgetting boundaries between human and divine. You drink it again among the crowds, and suddenly the air is full of light, music, and the taste of joy itself. Everywhere you go, Bang carries the same paradox. It softens the edges of the world, but sharpens the feeling of being alive within it. The merchants say it helps them endure the heat. Poets claim it makes language bloom. Lovers whisper that it dissolves distance. You begin to see that in India. The plant is not an indulgence, but a philosophy, a way to participate in the cosmic dance of illusion and truth. You travel north, where the Himalayas rise like stone prayers against the sky. The air grows thin and clear. In small mountain monasteries, you find monks who smoke quietly beside butter lamps, their faces serene as clouds drift past snow peaks. They call it Summer of the Sages, not for pleasure, but for vision. One monk explains, when the world becomes too loud, we must remind the mind how to listen. He closes his eyes, exhales slowly, and the smoke rises like a sigh of eternity. At night, you camp among shepherds who share the same chillum used by their grandfathers. Around the fire, they tell stories of gods descending from the mountains, of rivers born from moonlight, of Shiva drinking poison to save creation, and how, to calm the burning in his throat, he created Bang. It cooled his fire. One shepherd says, his eyes reflecting the flames. That is why we use it too, to cool what burns inside. You realize how seamlessly the plant has woven itself into myth, medicine, and survival. It belongs to no single caste or class. It sits in temples beside gold offerings and in village huts beside clay pots. It moves through every hand with the same quiet acceptance. It is as much a part of India's soul as the monsoon or the cowbell. But not all stories are soft. You hear whispers of suppression, foreign laws, colonial fears, governments that sought to control what they did not understand. British officers once tried to outlaw Bang, calling it vice. But when they surveyed the land, they discovered its presence was too deep. Even their own soldiers used it. The report concluded, almost in resignation, that to ban it would be to deprive the people of their solace. You find this note amusing and tragic. The empire learning humility through smoke. Still, despite modern scrutiny, the spirit persists. In small villages, families continue to pass down recipes for Bang Lassi and Thandai. Holy men still light chillums beside sacred rivers. In urban apartments, young people rediscover the same calm that ancient texts promised. The plant has outlasted empires, creeds, and borders. Not because it was hidden, but because it was understood. You wander to the desert of Pushkar, where sand dunes shimmer like copper under the sun. A festival fills the air with bells and laughter. Traders sell brass lamps, shawls, and little bundles of dried leaves wrapped in cloth. The scent is unmistakable. You follow it to a tent where an old man sits cross-legged beside a low fire. "Come," he says without looking up. "You've walked far. You sit." He grinds the herbs with slow, circular motions. "The smoke to forget distance," he says. "Between us, between the gods, between what we are and what we pretend to be." He fills the pipe and passes it to you. The smoke is thick and warm. When you exhale, you see your breath mix with his. For a moment, you cannot tell whose it is. That night, you dream of the Ganges flowing backward, of stars sinking into its current, of gods laughing quietly under the water. You dream that the smoke from your lungs becomes a bridge, connecting mountain to ocean, memory to breath. And when you wake, the dream lingers like mist on your skin. You travel south, to Kerala, where rain falls in soft curtains and the air smells of earth and spice. Ayurvedic healers greet you with garlands and quiet eyes. They show you scrolls that describe the plant's uses, not just for the mind, but for fever, digestion, and pain. They call it Vijaya, the victorious. In their philosophy, every medicine must balance body, energy, and spirit. Cannabis, they say, does all three. One healer tells you, "We do not heal with fire alone. We heal with the smoke that carries prayer." You realize, sitting in that humid clinic with walls of herbs and oils, that the plant's essence hasn't changed. It adapts, but never loses its core. Whether burned for gods or brewed for healing, it always returns to the same truth connection. It binds human to divine, earth to sky, thought to silence. As dusk settles over the coast, you stand by the Arabian Sea. The horizon glows faintly pink. Fishermen light small fires on the beach, their smoke rising in columns that vanish into the dark. You close your eyes and breathe deeply. The scent of salt, wind, and bang mingles in the air. Somewhere behind you, temple bells echo, slow, rhythmic, eternal. You think about all the paths that led here. The shamans of Siberia, the monks of China, the priests of Egypt, the tribes of Africa, and realize that in India, the plant finally found a voice that could sing every one of those stories at once. Not a god, not a vice, simply a bridge. When the night grows quiet, you sit by a lone fire, the waves whispering nearby. You take one last puff from a chillum handed to you by a stranger. The smoke drifts upward, soft as a prayer. You exhale slowly, watching it dissolve into the stars. And as it fades, you feel it again. The same truth whispered across centuries. That smoke is not just breath. It's memory set free. The waves grow darker now, and the salt on your lips reminds you that you're no longer in the comfort of ritual or temple light. You've followed the trail of the plant across the old world, from caves to courts, from the Ganges to the Nile, and now you stand on the wooden deck of a ship creaking toward the horizon. The year is changing, centuries blur. The smoke that once rose quietly from chillums and censers is now mixing with sea fog and cannon soot. The world is trading faster, hungrier. Empires stretch their arms across oceans, and with them travel the habits, seeds, and vices of the old continents. You are entering an age where smoke will not only heal or bless, it will brand, enslave, and conquer. The sailors on board are a mixed chorus of humanity. Portuguese, African, Indian, and Arab voices rise and fall with the waves. The cook hums a sea shanty while grinding spices, slipping something green into his pipe before the night watch. "For the nerves," he says with a wink. The captain pretends not to notice. Out here, the ocean is the great equalizer. Rank dissolves into salt and superstition. When storms rage and masts crack like bones, no one cares whether the smoke curling between their lips comes from sacred hemp or cheap tobacco. What matters is that it steadies the hands. In barrels below deck, hemp fibers are coiled into thick ropes, tarred and heavy. Without them, the ship could not sail. The irony isn't lost on you. The same plant once burned in temples now binds the masts of global empires. It is both tool and totem, carrying the weight of centuries. The sailors call it mariner's thread, and they bless it with spit and rum before setting sail, believing it keeps storms at bay. "Without hemp, we'd drown," one of them mutters, tightening a knot. You drift from port to port, Lisbon, Luanda, Havana, Calcutta, and each place smells faintly familiar. Spice, salt, and smoke. In the harbors of the New World, new rituals are being born. Slaves brought from Africa hide their herbs among sugarcane stalks. rolling leaves around dreams of home. The overseers call it contraband, but they cannot ban what they don't understand. At night, when the fields go quiet, men and women gather in circles, lighting small pipes carved from bone or gourd. The smoke they share is not rebellion, it's remembrance. In the Caribbean, you hear it called ganja again, a whisper carried by Indian indentured laborers who arrived after slavery's abolition. They brought seeds from home, tucked inside cloth or hair, and planted them in new soil that still remembered chains. The rhythm of the drum changes, but the heartbeat remains the same. On moonlit nights, smoke rises from cane fields as people sing softly in Hindi, Creole, and Yoruba. You realize you're watching cultures fuse. The first global ceremony, born from pain but scented with hope. The sailors begin trading more than goods. They swap stories, cures, and indulgences. One night in Jamaica, a Portuguese trader hands an African farmer a pouch of green dust. "It calms the sea inside your head," he says. The farmer laughs, tries it, and nods. The next day, he mixes it with herbs he already knows, clove, kola nut, and tobacco, and creates something new. The smoke that follows doesn't belong to any single land. It's a conversation between continents. Historians still argue whether cannabis truly came to the Americas by ship or by wind. But standing here, with the stars wheeling overhead, you can feel the truth ideas travel faster than bodies. A single ember can leap across oceans if carried by story. You make your way north, toward colonies where merchants and explorers boast of progress and God, while secretly indulging in the same sins they condemn. In Boston taverns and London drawing rooms, imported tobacco reigns supreme, yet whispers of the Indian hemp begin to spread. Doctors experiment with tinctures, calling them miracle tonics for pain and sleeplessness. A few poets, always the first to rebel, write verses about the gentle vine of thought, and pass the pipe beneath the table when sermons grow dull. Still, the official story is one of denial. Colonial governments profit from tobacco and rum, not from anything that hints of rebellion or introspection. So cannabis remains in the margins, sailors' comfort, slaves' solace, mystics' friend. Yet you sense that its quiet persistence will soon become its power. Every port hides a seed, every traveler becomes a carrier. You spend nights below deck with a young navigator named Emilio, who swears the plant helps him see the stars more clearly. The sky is full of paths, he says, puffing gently, eyes reflecting the constellations. You just have to soften your mind enough to notice them. You laugh, but part of you wonders if he's right. The ocean stretches endlessly, yet you feel less lost with every exhale. The horizon stops being a line and becomes a loop, like smoke rising, curving, returning. When you finally dock in South America, the air is thicker, sweeter. Brazil hums with color. There, African and indigenous traditions entwine like vines. You're invited to a torero, a sacred circle where drums call spirits and smoke serves as both veil and offering. The priestess waves a bundle of herbs over your head, chanting in a language older than empire. You close your eyes as the scent surrounds you. Tobacco, cannabis, and something floral. This smoke, she whispers, is not for forgetting. It is for remembering where your soul has walked. In the Andes, you find miners chewing coca leaves for strength, priests burning incense to appease volcano gods, and travelers carrying little bundles of cannabis for the aches of altitude. The plant has changed hands again, but not its nature. It remains a companion, a quiet healer in a world obsessed with conquest. By the 1700s, hemp has become the backbone of empire. It's in every sail, every rope, every paper decree that divides land and lives. Kings sign treaties on hemp parchment, while their ships carry hemp cargo. It's as if the plant is both foundation and witness, used by rulers who never understand its spirit. You imagine it laughing softly in its fibers, knowing it has outlasted them all. You board another ship, this one bound for Europe. The mood is restless. News of revolutions flickers through taverns like candlelight. America, France, Haiti. Everywhere, the old order trembles. People crave freedom, but few realize that freedom often begins in the smallest acts of breath. A moment of calm, a refusal to obey the mind's master. On deck, sailors still smoke their pipes in secret, finding peace where governments cannot reach. In London, apothecaries sell hemp oil for stomach ailments and nervous conditions. In Paris, artists drink absinthe and whisper of exotic resins from the East, hashish from Egypt, Morocco, and Persia. A few eccentric writers form hashish clubs, claiming it opens doors to divine imagination. You attend one such gathering in a dim salon lit by oil lamps. Painters and poets pass around a pipe carved like a serpent. To dream, one of them says, is the only true rebellion. You inhale, and the world melts into gold and velvet. The air hums. You see, briefly, how ancient and modern meet in the same haze. But even as Europe experiments, its colonies still bear the plant's weight. The same powers that praise it in salons condemn it among slaves. A paradox thick as smoke. The empire loves the medicine, but fears the freedom it inspires. The contradiction will only grow. You leave the old world again, this time following merchant ships that weave through Caribbean islands and up the Mississippi. In each port, the smoke finds new shapes. Pipes carved from coral, cigars rolled with wild leaves, songs that praise the green blessing. The plant becomes multilingual. It's no longer just bang or ganja. It's herb, dope, daggerweed. Each name a disguise, each disguise a survival. You stop in Louisiana, where the jazz has not yet been born, but already hums in the bones of the city. Musicians play in courtyards, their eyes half closed, their rhythm easy. Someone passes you a hand, rolled cigarette, and the world loosens by a fraction. Makes the horn sing sweeter. The player says, you nod. Music and smoke, breath and art, it's all the same language. By the time industrial machines begin to roar in the 1800s, the world has changed beyond recognition. Factories rise, cities swell, and smoke no longer drifts lazily. It billows in black columns. The old spiritual smokes of ancestors have been replaced by chimneys, and the scent of ritual has become the smell of industry. But tucked between gears and greed, the plant endures, hidden in pockets and gardens, in songs and recipes, in the quiet sighs of those who still remember. The sailors, traders, and wanderers who once carried it are gone now, replaced by steamships and telegraphs. Yet the essence remains. In every hemisphere, someone sits by a small flame, inhales, and sees beyond the horizon. You realize the story has become circular. The same plant that bound sails now frees minds. The same smoke that guided ships now guides souls. The ocean that once divided worlds has become the bridge between them. You lean on the railing of a ship heading west again, the wind cool against your face. The stars overhead feel closer, almost friendly. Below deck, sailors laugh softly. Someone strums a guitar. The smell of hemp rope mingles with pipe smoke, and for a moment, it feels as though every age you've traveled through is exhaling at once. The waves glimmer like molten glass. You take a deep breath and let it out slowly. History isn't written in books, you think. It's written in breath, in the trails of smoke that curl upward and disappear, only to return again as wind. The sea seems to agree, whispering back through foam and spray. Nothing truly fades, it only changes form. You watch as dawn breaks, a soft pink line between sky and sea. A sailor nearby lights a pipe and offers it wordlessly. You take it, inhale, and the world seems to settle. Calm, wide, eternal. You realize this isn't just another stop in the journey. It's the turning point. The moment when smoke stops belonging to ritual alone and becomes the shared inheritance of everyone who dares to breathe deeply. And so, as gulls rise and the horizon brightens, you understand that every voyage, every empire, Every act of trade or rebellion has been part of a single exhalation, the world breathing itself awake. The ship docks in a new century, and the first thing you notice is silence. The kind that follows thunder. The industrial world hums with iron and ambition now. Steam engines wheeze down streets lined with lamps that burn all night, and cities glow with an artificial dawn. The air is thick with soot and optimism, and yet, somewhere underneath it, something ancient flickers, like an ember caught in metal gears. The old rituals of smoke have been replaced by factories and cigarettes. People no longer speak of communion with the divine, but of production, speed, and science. The world has traded incense for industry, and in the process, it has almost forgotten to breathe. You walk through London, and the fog tastes different here. It's not sacred anymore. It's industrial residue, born from coal fires and progress. Still, in the back alleys and apothecaries, you find traces of the plant that once guided shamans and poets. Bottles labeled extract of Indian hemp sit beside tonics and cough syrups, their labels promising peace, sleep, and relief from female ailments. Victorian doctors prescribe it freely, unaware, or pretending not to be aware, that they are rekindling something far older than science. In drawing rooms, polite society begins to experiment. Artists and dreamers form quiet clubs, borrowing from the French club des Hashischins, where writers like Baudelaire and Gautier once praised the Green Muse. Here in England, they whisper about cannabis indica, wrapped in exoticism and myth. They speak of Eastern mysticism as though it were perfume, inhaling it without understanding the history in their lungs. You listen as they pontificate about visions and inspirations, and you can't help but think of the sadhus by the Ganges, whose chants carried the same rhythm long before anyone wore top hats or quoted philosophy. But something shifts. Curiosity gives way to fear. The same plant that soothed the anxious now begins to frighten the powerful. Rumors circulate, wild tales about madness, moral decay, and danger to society. The plant becomes an easy scapegoat for a world already anxious about change. The industrial age thrives on order, on control, on measured production. And anything that softens the mind, that encourages introspection instead of industry, becomes suspicious. Historians still argue whether this fear was born from ignorance or intention. Some say it was economic, a way to protect new pharmaceutical empires that wanted synthetic control over healing. Others point to colonial anxiety, the fear of the foreign, the spiritual, the uncontrollable. Whatever the cause, by the late 19th century, cannabis was being written out of polite medicine and into the margins of law. You travel across Europe and America, watching as attitudes shift like smoke caught in a draft. In laboratories, chemists break the plant down into components, stripping it of mystery. They name its molecules, weigh its properties, file it under narcotic. What was once sacred becomes scientific data, catalogued, measured, and sanitized. You stand beside a glass flask as pale green oil drips from a tube, and you feel a strange grief. The alchemy that once belonged to shamans is now confined to sterile rooms. The plant is no longer a bridge between human and divine, it's a specimen. Still, it finds ways to slip through the cracks. In America, patent medicines advertise hemp elixir for nervous disorders. Housewives keep small vials in drawers. Soldiers carry it in field kits, and musicians whisper that it makes time bend. You hear blues drifting from a back alley in New Orleans, slow and honey, thick, and smell something familiar. The player grins, tapping his cigarette. "This ain't just smoke," he says. "This is memory that swings." You follow that rhythm into the early 1900s, where smoke curls through jazz clubs and tenement windows. Immigrants, travelers, and dreamers all share it, each calling it by a different name. Marijuana, reefer, grass. It becomes the soundtrack of the restless and the poor, those who have little but their breath to claim. The rich turn away in moral panic, calling it the drug of the undesirables, though many of them once sipped the same tinctures in their drawing rooms. The hypocrisy thickens with every puff. Politicians, emboldened by fear and convenience, begin to craft laws against it. Newspapers run stories about murderous weed and foreign menace. You read the headlines and remember the peaceful bang drinkers by the Ganges, the Scythians steaming in ritual tents, the priests burning incense to talk with gods. And you realize how short human memory can be. The same plant that once symbolized healing and divine insight is now painted as chaos incarnate. By the 1930s, the campaign against it becomes global. Posters show deranged faces, headlines scream madness, and a new word, marijuana, is used deliberately to sound alien. Governments pass laws not based on science but on fear. In America, the Marijuana Tax Act of 1937 becomes the first nail in the coffin. You watch as fields are burned, doctors are silenced, and 1,000 years of human relationship with the plant are rewritten overnight. The industrial age does not just forget, it forbids remembering. You visit pharmacies that once sold cannabis openly. Their shelves are bare now. In laboratories, research halts. In schools, children are taught to fear the leaf that once calmed gods. The irony is almost cosmic. Humanity, in its pursuit of progress, has criminalized one of its oldest companions. Still, under the surface, the ember glows. Soldiers returning from war whisper of how it eased their nerves. Writers in smoky rooms exchange coded words. Jazz musicians hide it in trumpet cases. The plant survives in secret, as it always has, waiting for the world to remember. You travel through decades like smoke through air, thin, invisible, but everywhere. The 1940s blur into the 1950s, an age of conformity and television smiles. Behind the white picket fences, people swallow pills to sleep, pills to wake, pills to feel, and pills to forget. The pharmaceutical age has arrived, built on the ashes of ancient herbs. You see it clearly now. Science has replaced ritual with dosage, spirit with prescription. Yet deep down, people still ache for something organic. Something that connects rather than numbs. In basements and college dorms, whispers return. A new generation begins to question authority, to look beyond the polished surfaces of progress. They find old books, Vedic hymns, Taoist scrolls, hashish poetry. They light candles, not cigarettes. The plant reappears, shyly at first, then boldly. Smoke rises again, and with it, memory. You stand on a California hillside, watching young people pass a joint like a relic rediscovered. It's natural. One girl says, laughing softly. Better than anything in a bottle. They speak of peace, of freedom, of connection. The same words you heard thousands of years ago beside riverbanks and temple fires. The cycle has turned once more. Historians still argue whether these cultural revivals were rebellion or rediscovery, but to you, it feels like both. Humanity, wary of machines and wars, is remembering how to breathe again. The irony is gentle and perfect. Progress has circled back to the beginning. You think of the Scythians steaming in their tents, the Egyptians burning incense, the Indian priests stirring bang. Their voices seem to echo through time, laughing softly at humanity's forgetfulness. You cannot outlaw the breath, they seem to say. You can only hold it for so long. Yet the fight is not over. Governments continue their crusades, propaganda persists. Scientists dissect, activists protest, and somewhere between them lies the simple truth the ancients already knew. That peace is not a chemical but a balance. The industrial world, with all its brilliance, still struggles to accept that wisdom cannot be patented. You walk down a city street at dusk, neon signs flickering, and catch a familiar scent in the air. Somewhere, someone is smoking. You can almost hear laughter, low, soft, free. The ember glows red, then fades, then glows again. You realize that despite everything, laws, fear, forgetting, the smoke has never stopped rising. It only waits for wind, When you look up, the city lights blur into constellations. The same stars the sailors once navigated by now hang above skyscrapers. The hum of engines fades beneath the rhythm of breath. The world keeps turning, and through it all, the same quiet truth endures. People have always sought comfort in smoke, and no amount of progress can make them stop reaching for that warmth. As you walk away, you think of all the ages behind you. The caves, the temples, the ships, the empires. Each left its own kind of ash. And you know that soon, a new kind of fire will begin again, because nothing stays forgotten forever. Smoke, like memory, always finds its way back into light. The century turns again, and the haze thickens not from chimneys, but from minds seeking to be free. You can feel it. The restless pulse of the 1950s, cracking open into something louder, brighter, more defiant. The war is over, but the scars still hum beneath pressed suits and polite smiles. Beneath the surface, a generation begins to whisper, to question, to exhale. In smoky basements and dim jazz clubs, the same ritual begins anew. Fingers pluck strings, drums roll low, and that ancient, sweet smell curls through the air. Cannabis returns, not as medicine or temple incense, but as rebellion, as rhythm, as release. The musicians call it the cool. It isn't just a plant now, it's a feeling, an act of defiance wrapped in quiet laughter. The horns cry, the bass walks slow, and in that haze, the boundaries blur. Black and white, poor and rich, young and old. All breathe from the same rolled leaf. And for a fleeting moment, the world feels equal. You listen to Miles, to Monk, to Bird. Their melodies swirl like incense smoke rising from the Ganges centuries before. But now it's amplified through trumpets and microphones. The divine has found new instruments. By the 1960s, the whisper becomes a roar. You find yourself in San Francisco's Height, Ashbury district, standing among the barefoot and the beautiful. The streets hum with guitars, laughter, protest chants, and the thick perfume of freedom. Smoke drifts from open windows, from parks, from rooftops where dreamers stare at stars and speak of love and peace. You recognize the rhythm. It's the same human yearning that built temples and lit torches in caves. Now it's dressed in tie, dye and denim. The circle continues. The plant becomes more than an escape. It becomes a statement. Against war, against control, against the polished lies of governments. You watch as students march through campuses, their banners fluttering with slogans for peace. In their pockets, small bags of green leaves sit like amulets. They pass joints in circles like ancient offerings, sharing not just smoke, but solidarity. Every exhale feels like defiance. Every puff a rejection of the sterile world their parents built. Yet, as before, the backlash follows. Governments double down, calling it a gateway. Menace. Poison. You see headlines echoing those from a century before, the same tone of fear wrapped in moral panic. But this time, the rebellion is too loud to silence completely. The music carries it. The Beatles singing of getting high with a little help. Dylan dreaming with smoke curling from his lips. Hendrix setting guitars and minds ablaze. The counterculture baptizes itself in sound and smoke, claiming the old ritual as its own. You drift through Woodstock in 1969, mud thick beneath your feet, the sky weeping rain and music. Thousands move as one body, one breath. You see lovers wrapped in blankets, smoke rising like ghostly banners. It feels primitive, communal, and almost holy. The same energy that filled the temples of Shiva or the tents of the Scythians is here again, only louder, wilder, electric. The world tries to categorize it, to contain it under labels: hippie, stoner, youth culture. But you know better. This is humanity remembering again. The 1970s arrive, and the fire cools slightly. The dreamers grow older, some lost to disillusionment, others to the heavy hand of law. You wander through the decade like smoke through a fan, scattered, but not gone. The plant finds new homes, reggae rhythms in Jamaica, Rastafarian hymns that turn the act of smoking into prayer. The healing of the nation, they call it, and you hear echoes of ancient hymns. You follow the trail to Kingston, where Bob Marley strums under the Caribbean sun. He speaks softly, with conviction. Herb is the unification of man. His voice feels like the whisper of old gods through vinyl crackle. Back in America, the culture splits. Some hide their smoke behind closed curtains, fearful of raids and reputation. Others light up proudly, turning defiance into lifestyle. The war on drugs begins in earnest, a machine of propaganda and punishment. You watch police raid homes, fields burned once more. The same old rituals of erasure replaying in the language of law. But every time they stamp out one spark, another lights elsewhere. Smoke always finds a way. By the 1980s, the world grows neon and greedy. Suits replace sandals, ambition replaces peace. The plant fades back underground, but it never disappears. It clings to the edges. Artists, musicians, wanderers, those who refuse to surrender their quiet rebellion. In a sea of fluorescent lights and stock market screens, you still find a few rooms filled with laughter and haze. The conversations drift toward memory, art, and the ache of disconnection. They aren't looking for escape. They're looking for something real in a synthetic world. And then the 1990s crack the air again. The youth rise once more, different clothes, same hunger. Grunge replaces psychedelia, rap replaces folk. But the rhythm is still rebellion. The plant resurfaces in lyrics, in protest, in identity. Rappers from the streets of LA and New York reclaim it not just as pleasure, but as heritage, as truth. They speak of injustice, of survival, of how the same leaf that once calmed gods now fills prisons. You stand in a haze of sound and anger, realizing that the plant story is no longer just spiritual, it's political, social, deeply human. The world begins to change again. Scientists, once silenced, start to whisper back. Studies emerge quietly, cautiously. Cannabis for pain, for nausea, for anxiety. Patients with trembling hands and sleepless eyes become the new priests of this era, bearing witness to what the ancients already knew. The language shifts. Medical marijuana. The phrase carries the weight of compromise, an uneasy truce between the sacred and the scientific. But it's enough to open the door. You visit California again, this time in the late 1990s. The sunlight is the same, but the air hums with something new. Legalization movements, compassion clubs, talk of reform. Smoke no longer hides in shadows. The leaf begins to reclaim its dignity. In quiet clinics, doctors recommend it openly, and patients light up without fear. You watch an old man with shaking hands steady them after a single puff, his eyes filling with quiet relief. It's not recreation, it's remembrance. By the early 2000s, the conversation grows global. Nations debate policies, scientists publish findings, and people begin to see through the fear. The ancient plant, once burned in temples, now appears in PowerPoint slides and parliamentary hearings. You marvel at the irony. What was once spiritual revelation is now supported by graphs and data. But progress, you realize, is just another form of rediscovery. As the digital age unfolds, the story of cannabis becomes everyone's story. Memes, documentaries, protests. Each voice adds to the chorus. The world connects again, not through incense or song, but through the hum of screens. Yet even here, in this new virtual temple, smoke curls in corners of creativity and calm. The rituals persist. One person lights up in Tokyo, another in Toronto, another in Lagos, all sharing the same rhythm through glowing screens. You feel the same sense of unity that once pulsed through ancient rituals. The world, despite its noise, is remembering how to breathe together again. The stigma still lingers, of course. Old fears die hard, but beneath the surface, change is steady, unstoppable. Politicians argue, lobbyists resist, but the people move like water, flowing around barriers, patient as time. You wander through Amsterdam's canals, where cafes glow with warmth and laughter. The air is heavy with the scent of freedom. Tourists sit beside locals, talking softly about art, love, and the absurdity of prohibition. It feels both ancient and new, the quiet communion of humans sharing smoke and story. You smile. It's the same ritual that began beside a campfire 10,000 years ago. By the late 2000s, cannabis has become both symbol and mirror, a reflection of humanity's contradictions. Science studies it, medicine validates it, but culture still battles over its meaning. Is it sin, salvation, or simply a part of us? You suspect the answer is all three. You walk through the streets of Denver as the first legal dispensaries open in the 2010s. Crowds cheer, cameras flash, and the air smells like victory. History bends back toward its origin. The leaf, once criminalized and feared, is sold now in glass jars with printed labels. You see young people and elders alike standing in line. Not outlaws but participants in a global remembering. The moment feels small and monumental all at once. The slow exhale of a species rediscovering its breath. You think of the long arc, the caves, the shamans, the temples, the pharaohs, the poets, the sailors, the soldiers, the rebels. Every era tried to define it, control it, banish it, worship it. But the plant outlived them all. It waited patiently, as if it knew that humans would always return, always seek its comfort, its clarity, its connection. The world may be louder now, faster, more digital than ever, but when people gather in small circles and light a flame, time still folds. The same smoke rises, the same laughter spills, the same questions whisper through the haze. What are we doing here? What connects us? What does it mean to simply breathe together? You exhale, and the air feels ancient. Somewhere far away, you can almost hear the faint beat of a drum, the chant of an old prayer, the crackle of a campfire. The story continues, unchanged and eternal, floating upward like smoke into the dark. The new century unfolds in bright pixels and soft clouds of vapor. You stand at the edge of a world more connected than ever, yet still searching for something that feels real. Cannabis, once whispered in secret, now gleams under LED lights in laboratories and dispensaries. The smell is familiar but refined, less wild, more cultivated, more human. You wander through a sleek store with polished counters and digital menus. Strains have names like poetry, Northern Lights, Blue Dream, Ghost Train. The jars glimmer with promise. Behind the counter, someone explains terpenes and cannabinoids as calmly as if they were describing wine. It's strange, this union of science and soul, but it feels inevitable. The same smoke that once rose from cave fires now glows under touchscreen light. You think back to the beginning, to the river valleys, to the tribal healers, to the shamans who first learned the language of smoke. They would never believe that their sacred plant would one day be taxed, regulated, and tracked by barcode. And yet, they would recognize the look in the eyes of the people who buy it now. That same quiet hunger for calm, that same curiosity about the unseen. Technology might have changed the tools, but not the impulse. Humans are still reaching for the same thing: a pause, a breath, a glimpse behind the curtain. The modern ritual feels clinical but strangely familiar. You picture someone in a small apartment, grinding the herb carefully, rolling it with attention that borders on reverence. Outside, drones hum and neon glows, but inside, time slows again. The lighter flicks, the flame touches leaf. Smoke curls upward like it always has. You can almost hear that ancient hum through the ages, the low heartbeat of connection. The first exhale feels the same as it did 10,000 years ago. Grounding, centering, gently rebellious. Mainstream facts have caught up with myth. Scientists confirm what shamans already intuited. Compounds that ease pain, quiet nerves, spark appetite, and soften the hard edges of grief. Medical journals speak of receptors and endocannabinoid systems, but the language of healing hasn't changed. People still say, It helps me. And that simple phrase carries all the weight of humanity's endless search for balance. Historians still argue whether cannabis culture is a reflection of rebellion or a return to nature. Maybe it's both. Maybe every generation rediscovers it because they need to. The plant doesn't demand worship or loyalty. It just waits patiently until people are ready to listen again. And they always are. You move through cities where smoke is legal now. Los Angeles, Vancouver, Berlin. Cafes hum softly, the air thick with conversation and laughter. Artists sketch, writers type, lovers hold hands. There's no secrecy, no shame. The ritual has been normalized, but it hasn't lost its magic. Every spark, every exhale, is still a small act of communion. You realize you're witnessing something ancient dressed in modern clothes. The same ceremony, just reinterpreted for a new age. And yet, the plant's story is still complicated. It's been decriminalized in some places, demonized in others. For every victory, there's resistance. For every acceptance, there's a lingering echo of fear. The old shadows of propaganda still flicker faintly at the edges. But they grow weaker with every year. Every study, every shared story of healing. Humanity is learning not just to tolerate the plant, but to understand it. You pause for a moment and look at the horizon. The world is loud, and screens never stop glowing. But the same old need hums beneath it all. The need to feel connected, to slow down, to breathe without purpose. Cannabis, once a symbol of rebellion, is quietly becoming a symbol of restoration. It's not about escape anymore. It's about coming home to yourself. You imagine the future. Not just dispensaries and laws, but rituals reborn. Digital temples where people gather to share stories and stillness. Scientists collaborating with shamans. Doctors working with elders, all acknowledging that wisdom doesn't only come from labs. Maybe one day, humanity will treat plants not as commodities but as teachers again. The quirky twist. Somewhere, on the International Space Station, a researcher once wondered if cannabis could grow in microgravity. The idea that humans might one day light up among the stars feels both absurd and inevitable. We've always carried our comforts with us into the unknown. From the first embers in caves to the glow of distant galaxies, the impulse is the same. A little warmth, a little wonder, and the courage to drift deeper into mystery. And so you exhale one last time. The story, like the smoke, disperses but never disappears. You can trace its path through every civilization, every culture, every quiet corner where humans have sat together and shared breath. It's not really about the plant. It never was. It's about the simple act of slowing the world long enough to feel it again. The air cools around you. The hum of life softens. You realize the story isn't ending. It's just resting, waiting for the next person to inhale, to remember, to continue. Wind down 300 words. Now the lights dim again, and your breathing settles into that slow rhythm you know so well. You've traveled through millennia tonight, across deserts, mountains, temples, and cities. You've stood beside fires and neon signs, always watching the same thin ribbon of smoke rise toward the dark. You've seen it carry prayers, laughter, rebellion, and relief. And now, as it fades into still air, you feel the weight of calm settle gently on your shoulders. Your body sinks deeper into rest. The world outside softens to a whisper. The hum of your fan, the slow sigh of night. The journey feels distant now, like a dream you can almost remember. You picture that ancient campfire again, the first spark of discovery glowing in the dark. Maybe that was the moment humanity began to learn what peace could feel like. You smile faintly, knowing that feeling still survives, passed from breath to breath, flame to flame. Let your eyes close. Let the past and the present blend like smoke. You are part of the same story, the same endless circle of curiosity and calm. Every exhale connects you to the millions who came before, who found in the simplest act of breathing something holy. The smoke fades, but its warmth remains. The night folds around you, soft and steady. You've seen how far this story stretches, and now it's time to rest, so breathe in. Hold, exhale, let it all go. Sweet dreams.